I'm on that overload, overkill. I'm redline and I'm blue pills. High octane's my intake. I'm P. Swayze, man, point break. Make no mistakes, I don't care. Not one shit will be given here. Make the room shake, earthquake, turbulence, outer space, yeah, let it go. Cruise control, full speed ahead with my eyes closed. I smoke the best, just hydro. Make my eyes red like Diablo. I'm taking off, next to go. Molotov, set the blow. These crimson eyes, I set the glow. Medieval shit, man, crossbows, we dangerous. Beast mode, got catapults for the bags of dope. Man, set in stone, good to go. Found my zone in the Alamo, yeah, big time. Dinosaur, so big, colossal. You stuck in dirt, man, fossils. We taking off, full throttle, let's go. Yelling at the sky, singing. Rolling finger wide, singing. Yelling at the sky, singing.
Okay, get it, got it, get it.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Whiskey Throttle Show right here from the DrD Designs Saloon in Corona, California. I'm your host, David Pingree. We've got a cool show today. Dr. D, the doctor, is in the house. This guy's a former Supercross winner, factory Yamaha rider, and human dyno is what he's known as. So that should be fun to get with Doug here and go through his career. With us, as always, Grant Langston, our co-host.
How are you, buddy?
Good. And Donnie Bales, how we doing, buddy?
Good, man.
Hanging in there?
Hanging in there.
I want to thank our sponsors, and it's apropos that Yamaha title sponsors our show because we've got their boy in here. Dr. D has done a lot for that brand over the years, which we'll get into. They're the leader in the power sports industry, and they make awesome products all the way around. 2 wheels, 4 wheels, piano keys, you name it. Blue Crew, get on board. PowerDot, go over to powerdot.com and check those guys out if you're looking for a way to relieve knotted muscles, recover from injury, recover from soreness from working out or riding. Awesome, proven product. And you get 20% off using the code Whiskey Throttle. Method Race Wheels, they're going to bring you our front end chatter segment. 20% off on a set of wheels over there using our code also. So go do that. DrD Designs, they're bringing you our timeout today. SKDA. If you have not seen their new Whiskey Throttle Show graphics, go check them out. skda.moto.au.
Yep, think so.
You can find them. SKDA Graphics. Really cool new show graphics they made for us. And they're 20% off for the next, I want to say 60 days. So I would hustle. 4 Wheel Parts bringing you our Get Me Q&A. They're your one-stop shop for anything off-road, for your off-road vehicles. Adidas.
Don't be a dick to your feet.
Don't do it. Put some good shoes on them. Pro Circuit, the most successful race team in history, maybe? Possibly?
I think so. I mean, they've won a lot.
Well, just, you can make the argument.
A lot.
You can make the argument. Dunlop Tires, just simply the leader in that sport and that space. And those guys have never backed out of this sport. I love that about Dunlop. All these other manufacturers pull out when it's not suiting their needs. Man, Dunlop's never backed out. I love that. Those guys are fully committed. Nihilo Concepts, get a free gift over there using the code Whiskey Throttle. If you purchase anything, go check out all of their products. Fire Department Coffee, firefighter owned and operated. Those guys give you 20% discount on any orders you make using our code Whiskey Throttle, and also 10% of their net proceeds go to firefighter charities. So good stuff for a good cause. Seat Concepts, if you need a cover or the whole seat for your bike, your four-wheeler, your snowmobile, whatever it is, go check those guys out. The best seats you can buy, period. Specialized Bicycles, the leader in that space as well. And Ogio, they're bringing you our What's in the Bag segment. So we'll get to that. That should be fun. So, Doug, we're going to bring you into our first segment called the Method Race Wheels Front End Chatter. Just kind of where we cover some interesting topics, and I catered it to you this time. So, so here's question number 1. Method Race Wheels, lightest, strongest, fastest wheels in the world, period. Bringing you these questions. Was the 4-stroke revolution a mistake?
Oof.
Wow, a heavy one right off the bat.
Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
How do you sleep at night knowing that you made everyone buy a 4-stroke and spend so much money
Forget
on parts?
Forget the softballs. You just get a hard one right across the nose. You got the first pitch.
That was a fastball straight at the head.
Shots fired.
I don't believe it's a mistake. You know, there's argument in every which direction on any topic. But, yeah, the 4-stroke revolution it's just part of what what we do. We always want to make a faster, better, able to leap tall buildings kind of product, and that's just, I think, the original guy. And I don't know the 100% of the history, but I hear lots of little things that this guy almost built this thing off hours in his own garage. He was so passionate about what he thought it could bring to the table. That's what he did, and he, burning the midnight oil and all that sort of stuff, brought this thing to the managers and said, "Hey, I think this can work." And so, everyone blames me. It wasn't me. That wasn't me up, at 3 a.m. designing the latest, greatest four-stroke engine. But so, as it came along, then we all started to see the benefits. I was like everybody else. I heard this project's coming, our way for U.S. testing, and I'm like, oh, I just pictured Spud Walters on an XR400 going, oh, really? It just looks painful.
Yeah.
Heavy, slow. Just everything.
And the sound, when you weren't used to it, I feel like the sound was so annoying in the beginning.
Exactly. And then not even just the beginning, like everybody just, it's got to be loud. That's the only way it's going to go. No, it's not what it has to be. But so, yeah, we just kind of, accepted the product when it came, and, and it wasn't great from day one, but, each time it came back, it got notably better. And I can remember one day at Carlsbad, this is probably, because I think we first started riding that thing maybe early 96, I want to say. And then by the end of 96, maybe the third time we saw it, all of a sudden I went, wow, this is going to be good. This is really, if it's still this early and it's this good, this is going to be a pretty big game changer.
Was probably a good track for it as well.
I think they positioned that just to fluff the test riders a bit, because, it was...
Put a Supercross, bring out a 252 stroke with a Supercross setup, and then the Forza. Here, go compare for me at Carlsbad at 2 in the afternoon.
They were good at positioning, picking the right place to test that bike. But it had all the things that we've all experienced now today. All the front wheel traction, just the stability, and cutting the bumps in half, and all the things that it had over the 2-stroke. They became pretty obvious pretty early.
Yeah.
Well. Any kind of what you said, I feel like there's two things about motocross racers. We love the freedom of riding and individuality of it, and actually just doing it is fun. But we also, I think most of us have like a mechanical side where we like to tinker. Even if you're not really good at pulling it apart, you like to, put stickers on.
You like to think you can.
Yeah, you like to think you can, right? So you're right. We like the next. What's
it does
the latest,
give you
greatest?
every level of tinkering that you can, just from putting stickers on and cleaning all the way down to tearing down. So you have every manner of tinkering you can do.
And so when there's this new next thing that is supposed to be, it's like everyone, ooh, yeah, I got to have it. I don't know if it's good or bad, or if this is a huge mistake for the sport, but I'm in.
I'm all in. It's the latest, greatest. It's technology.
Well, everyone gets curious by the thought of something different and new. That idea that could be game-changing. You don't want to be left behind.
Everyone wants the advantage. The old minibike father is the key thing. That guy buys the kid 12 bikes because, he thinks that's going to make my kid the next Villapoto or whatever. So, it's everyone's eager.
Okay, let's say we had a time machine and we could wind it back. And the AMA rule was up to 450 cc's or whatever it was.
It was 550 at the time.
At the time it was 550.
Yeah. Okay, so knowing what we know now, if you could wind it back and say, no, listen, guys, this is what the numbers need to be. What would be a fair, 4-stroke cubic centimeter number to keep 2 strokes where it was competitive?
Yeah, I think...
or never mind the 2-stroke even, if it was just like, okay, what would be 2 good sizes to go racing on?
Yeah, I think the 250 was good. Obviously, it put the 125 out of business, so just in that way, and especially to keep the 2 classes separate, because I think about a 400 would be plenty enough. But I think, maybe a 200 and a 400. This is totally spitballing. I have no facts to back this up. But because I think you've seen what technology and a lot of hard work and a lot of money spent has done with the 250F. Because in the beginning, it was slightly better than the 125. But nowadays, you couldn't throw enough money at a 125 to make it competitive against a Star Racing Yamaha 250F. So I think yeah, maybe 200. Back then, it needed to be 270 almost, but nowadays, that just through the evolution of the engine development, they've pulled a lot of horsepower out of that stuff. And I think 450 arguably is still too much.
It's way too much.
What guys do, it's almost like the old 500 two-stroke days. I can remember, I had a little bit of taste of that because we were sort of forced to ride those bikes.
Yeah.
When the 500 class went away, then you were a 250 guy, but you had to ride 6 rounds on this bike that you'd never ridden before. I can remember my first national I went to, I'm like, holy cow, I've ridden this bike like 4 times and it's got like, let me cave the pipe in. Then maybe I could do a good lap time on it because it was just so.
Dumb it down a little bit.
Yeah. So, again, I think there is. I think they could pull them back.
Yeah, you're right. The 250 is I think a good bike, but there's nothing those guys can't do. There's nothing the 450s can jump that those guys can't, which
I
is
almost think
telling.
a 200 and a 400, or even a 175 and a 350. If you're talking 4 strokes.
Yeah.
Well, on a Supercross track, they run the same lap times.
Sometimes quicker because they can corner a little bit.
The harder part about doing the speed on a 450 is that it's so much heavier and so much more mass. It's really hard to make that bike turn and move.
And managing it, because you look at a lot of the outdoor series, the 250 class was faster. And a little bit of that is when the guys are on the track and how hammer the track. There's a lot of things, but you look at some of those times. Second moto, when that 450 is a lot to handle, those 250 guys get faster again. Only when the track's just perfect does that 450 have any chance of having that faster lap time.
Isn't there some rule where I've seen 250F guys riding in the 450 class?
You can.
I've seen a couple guys do it to get ready for the East Coast or something like that.
Well, they do allow you to ride that. And I don't know how it's written. I don't know what the actual rule says, but those guys, they'll ride the West in preparation for the East, but they want to be developing their 250 machine. So
does it really matter what the rule says?
Well, let's not go that far off topic just yet.
Here's what I think, though. Like, we talk about the 4-stroke evolution, and we got kind of joking how you said you got some criticism about steering the 4-stroke evolution.
Doug ruined the sport.
Sorry.
It was coming either way.
Well, exactly.
I mean, if you go look at the history, there were 4-strokes around, in the early days, especially in the British bikes. And the reason they went to 2-strokes was people would just realize, well, we can get more performance or more speed out of this,
Lighter, faster, less moving parts, all of it.
And then that was when 4-stroke technology was in its early stages. So the bikes, like you said, they were heavy. They weren't actually that fast. They didn't show their benefits yet. Then I think what happened was you saw as technology moved forward, they revisited it going, wait a minute, now we can make this thing potentially better than a 2-stroke. So I think sometimes people read too much into it about how people try to change the sport. I think people were looking at ways to make a better product for a consumer. And it's always hard to predict what that's going to do to a sport moving forward.
Hey, I like that in the 80s, 90s, there were 4-stroke nationals, and now there's 2-stroke nationals.
Yeah.
So it's flip-flopped.
Yeah. But, I mean, just like Grant says, you sit in a product planning meeting, they're going, okay, what is the next thing?
Yeah.
Well, how are we going to sell it to that customer?
Different as well.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be a little different.
And, I mean, I don't know how much influence, but you can't ignore that the EPA is starting to really come down. Oh, you can't put oil in your gas. You're killing whatever you're killing. But yeah,
and that was a big driver, too, was the emission side of it.
Exactly. And that may have been, and again, I don't know the whole history, but that could have been a driving force. Like, hey, I'm going to be a hero because I'm going to develop a at least competitive bike, and we're going to meet or exceed all these other EPA, laws that are coming down the pike. So,
yeah.
So my next question then, what are we going to be racing in 10 years or 20 years from now?
Dirt bikes.
Well, yeah, hopefully we're all still on dirt bikes. But, I mean, obviously the electric market is, kind of inching in there, but it's just not there yet. That you can't ride one of those electric bikes that hard and have.
But in 10 years?
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I play with remote control car stuff, so I can remember back when that early battery technology and, motor demand on the unit, all these things have gone through the roof. They've changed so much over the last 10, 20 years. So
now you can get a wicked little car for $150, and, you're like,
it's way better than the one you spent $800
exactly.
on. Yeah, which in today's dollars was $2,000. So but that just like you say, it's what are we going to build next? What will the consumer bear? Almost, it's like cost versus the experience. What's that in so all those things is what everyone's trying to do. They're trying to be the next guy.
Do you sit in on those Yamaha meetings? Are you privy to that at all, or is it more like
I used to
once they make the decisions and it's like, all right, hey Doug, we need your help?
That was my original role was, hey Doug, we need your help. Here, decide A, B, or C. But then the more involved I got in the total program, then I was involved in more of the product planning things and a little earlier in the stage. We always used to joke, well, they give it to us and it's already got so many flaws built into it before we ever saw it. But, so by our pressure, we were getting involved earlier and earlier in the process. And then some of us were key to some of the clay model as well as just direction of what it's going to be. Yeah. So that stuff was exciting. I don't do as much with Yamaha these days. Big switch some years back with employee versus contract employee, all this kind of stuff. But so my role's changed there. I still do some work with them, and it's just, it's a little bit different nowadays in this environment.
But you think the electric market is where we're headed?
Yes, obviously, because, we all thought, the Chevy Volt was kind of a joke and, it was just government funded and all that you could conspiracy-wise with that. But you can see there, at least electric vehicles are here to stay. But again, that's a very different need than what a motocross bike, and especially at a high level. Because I think, those Altas had a big push there for a while, spent a lot of money, and I think in the right environment, that would have been a very successful product. But unfortunately, in the moto world, guys, even not at the top level, but easily you could push past what that thing could handle. So that I think was a big stepping stone, but I'm sure they'll get over it. It's all money and technology.
I got to test one of the Altas at Pala Raceway the one day, and the guys were like, "Yeah, man, we're probably going to have an outdoor team." And I did a couple laps and came in. I said, "This thing will never qualify." They were not impressed with me. I said, "They're like, how far off are we?"
Sometimes they don't appreciate the honesty.
Is it 250F? I'm like, "We're here."
Yeah.
Quite a bit off. And they were a little surprised. I said, "Look, I'm not the lightest guy out there." And I said, "The track's a little heavy," but it was still quite a ways off.
Yeah.
And I think they realized that pretty quickly too, that having something fun in your backyard, like on a mountain bike trail, they're amazing. Mm-hmm. But when you go on the thick, deep moto, out of a corner, big jump, they didn't have what it took.
You could, and you can dial it up to make it as fast as you want it.
Yeah, and start melting stuff.
Your battery's done in 10 minutes and it's steaming.
You got a seat warmer all of a sudden because the heat's coming out of the battery below your ass.
That's a nice feature in some cars.
Yeah.
All right. So what about, let me just pick your brain about two-stroke. There's a lot of chatter in F1 and MotoGP about developing new two-stroke motors. Mm-hmm. Suzuki's had a boat engine forever that was fuel-injected two-stroke. And I think Evinrude actually bought it from them. It's really good technology. Fewer emissions than four-strokes. Is that something we'll ever get to? Or do you just think that ship kind of sailed?
No, I don't think it has at all because, if I remember somebody had told me just some years back, hey, there's a new, technology coming down the pike. It's going to be half the moving parts, twice the horsepower per displacement, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, it's a two-stroke engine. And we're like, okay. Yeah,
half the displacement.
But I think it's just like the whole four-stroke thing, and Grant touched on it a little while ago, where the four-stroke engine had this, and then the two-stroke engine surpassed it. Well, everyone's just sort of written off the two-stroke as dead technology. Well, it just hasn't been revisited with any kind of dollars in engineering in a long time. 20
almost
years.
20 years. Yeah, I was going to say.
So,
and a lot's changed. Go look at our industries. A lot has really advanced, whether it's paint technology, science, all that. A lot's happened in the last 20 years.
Exactly. And so what I know, there's a lot of people playing with fuel-injected two-stroke stuff. TM, Italian company, they've actually got a very good one right now. I've kind of got some inroads with some guys in Italy and Germany that are very involved in those projects. And they're telling me, oh yeah, we're able to put almost half the amount of engine oil into the gas because of the way it distributes it in to the engine. You're not having to drown it in oil to protect it.
Right.
You're getting that lubrication through. So I know there's certainly a lot there, and these guys are just touching the surface. They're a small company. They don't have the dollars that a Yamaha or a Cowie or Honda has. So, it's. I don't know anything, and don't come and start blowing me up on social media in a year or two if something does make a big change. But because I'm a little bit removed from the Yamaha and what's coming down the pipe, but I would say that there is going to be some resurgence. Or at least I'm hoping, because I think that we owe that to the people. Let's revisit this, because just because it ran into kind of a limit, be it EPA or because delivery and all that kind of stuff of tractable power and just everything. I think they can do a lot, because there's so much more with electronic power valving and things like that can give it more of that 4-stroke feel. That we were just getting into some fairly complex power valve type of things, and those 2-strokes were very, very good. It's just a 4-stroke leaped ahead. So I don't know. I wish I did, but and I'd have to lie to you if I did, but I don't.
Well, to your point, you said MotoGP, F1. When you go and look over the years, F1 technology slowly trickles down and ends up in our day-to-day cars. Same with MotoGP on motorcycle technology, but with moving forward, if you're talking about, they've designed bearings that have like no resistance or friction, that just car can coast forever. They've got metals that create less heat, less friction. So you run on less oil, so technology is changing everything to a point where, and if you look at our bikes, since we've all ridden, they were pretty simple. Now you almost need a laptop to be able to tune a bike. Before you needed a grinding tool or something.
Or an iPhone. Don't forget your iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. On the Yamaha, you can go and it's pretty remarkable, but it just shows that a lot of our performance and I think even from a dealer standpoint, guy brings a bike in not running very well. What's the first thing we do is we plug in our Yamaha tool or whatever the bike may be, and it's like a car. It almost gives us a feedback, and it's like, all right, makes this almost idiot-proof. That needs to be torn down. That's, hey, Mr. Customer, this is what we need. So if you can do that and bring it to a simpler, cheaper technology again, like 2-strokes, I think you could have a winning formula.
My concern about electric is it's going to be really boring to watch. Picture any big race.
Say for MotoGP, F1, you'll never get a crowd to go.
Just the noise of the tires going by. I would say agree with you 100%, because you don't go to a drag race to watch a car squirt down to move. It's not the motion, it's the whole thundering
it's the whole
feeling.
Experience.
Exactly.
Blowing your eardrums out.
Even with headsets on, you can still feel the movement, the shake, the horsepower that those things are putting out. So I totally agree with that would have some they need to put a soundtrack in there.
I said you could put any sound you wanted on it. Like we were talking about, you could have dolphins chirping on your bike when you go by, or whatever you want.
Of course, you came up with dolphins chirping.
I was going to say that wouldn't be my first choice. I would put like a well-tuned factory 2-stroke 250. That's the soundtrack I would put on my electric bike.
I was saying, I've done Pikes Peak several times, and some of my buddies have the record at Pikes Peak on an electric bike, but they have to have sirens on the bikes going up the hill so fans don't step out on the course and get run over.
Oh wow, yeah, that's. Very different.
Yeah, good stuff. We're going to get more into some of the 4-stroke stuff here as we get into your questions. That's our Beth the Race Wheels front end chatter. Go over to whiskeythrottlemerch.com. We got some new stuff. We got this new sweater. We got a bunch of new T-shirts in all different colors. No matter what brand you ride, you got something there for you. That's thanks to Temecula T-shirt printers. Also, there's the Mad Skills Motocross World Championships are coming up soon, this spring sometime. And you can play Jam starting March 23rd to qualify for that. So get on and go to those Jam competitions on there and check it out. All right, let's get into Dr. D's life. The life and times.
How far back we going?
To the beginning. Where were you born?
Birth. Garden Grove, California.
And what was that? What year were you born?
1963.
So what did it look like back then? I wish I could see.
Well, I mean,
Garden
it was
Grove, there was
clearly. I lived in Anaheim. I think the hospital was just located in Garden Grove,
Okay.
but they're neighboring cities. But yeah, my recollection from when I can actually remember, just such a simple life. Summertime, it was just a pack of kids, 3 to 20, either on bicycles, skateboards, unicycles, stilts, anything you could build or gather from. And we were all, your parents wouldn't see you from almost sun up. The whole pack would rush somebody's house for lunch at some point, and then you'd be gone again till dark. And, it's obviously very different today. So, it's unfortunate that the funny thing is, in kind of this whole current situation, it seems like I see more people out on the trail and, riding more and, just family together time more. So that's kind of an interesting phenomenon. But yeah, in like, I guess the 60s, early 70s, it was, we lived our lives on our BMX bikes and, with a shovel in hand and, pack of jumps. And
probably a lot more riding area as well than there is now, huh?
Well, yeah,
all those Anaheim hills had to be just empty and.
Well, I sound like my father when I roll by and tell my kids, we used to ride right here, and it's somebody's house, escape country, the old racing world. That was actually my very first race was May 15th, 1978. Yeah, obviously late by today's standards. I was 14 years old.
Well, you're skipping ahead. Don't skip ahead so much.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about your first bike, because this story's great.
So,
you went to the grocery store for...
Well, Gemco, which is like modern-day Costco, because they sold everything, from lawnmowers to eggs to...
Gemco?
But you had to have a membership. You had to have a membership.
It was I was a little young to make that determination, but yeah.
Fedco and Gemco were the same.
Were they both the same thing? Yeah. So... So we went in there, and I remember everyone, my mom and all 5 of us kids were there, and my dad bought us a 3-horsepower, it was Cat was the brand, mini bike. It was orange.
Like Caterpillar?
Like Caterpillar, but not the same company. Not that company, but that was the name of it. It was Cat mini bike. It had 3 horsepower like a Briggs & Stratton.
Yeah.
Rear brake was a piece of steel on the back tire.
Yes.
But operated by a pedal. When you didn't hold it in your hand and wedge it. So it's, pretty modern technology.
Pretty high tech.
Yeah, pretty high tech. Still pull start, and that was it was the only brake, no front brake. But we would just ride it up and down our street, because you could. Nobody cared. And, and that was, and then of course we had lot more friends because we had the only mini bike on the street at the time. But then we slowly, because I had an older brother that somehow warranted, we got the 5 horsepower.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was gold frame, and it had really modern suspension. It was the same steel fork, but they had slid a spring on the outside before they welded the permanent top triple clamp. So it had a spring-like...
but it didn't move. It was just
not at all. It was the same steel fork that was on the 3 horsepower, but they had slid a spring over for aesthetics.
Nice.
So it handled much better than the 3 horsepower one. But those were the early days. I mean, we would just goof around. My uncle lived in Hesperia, which seemed like a 3-day drive, which I know now is only about an hour and 10 minutes. But we'd pack up and go up there, and we would just ride in the empty field next to his house. You just booney around until we either ran out of gas or somebody got hurt.
And so you guys wore that thing out pretty good, I imagine.
Yeah. We didn't get to go up there because
is that the Cat right there?
That looks very much like it, but we didn't have that sexy seat. That's ours was more of the one bottom left there, just a flat seat on it.
Cat
that one. So that looked more like, because there was Taco. I remember that was what the rich kids had.
And they're back now.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard some of that. But
and they're still expensive. I was like, I'm going to get one. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not.
I don't. So, that's pretty much what ours... We didn't have shocks on the seat, though. That must have been some evolution of the Cat.
That was in the later 60s.
Yeah. That was the later 60s.
Only suspension if you sit on the back of the seat. Yeah.
If you're forward where you should be, no go.
Yeah.
But so my dad was handicapped. He was paraplegic in a wheelchair from
didn't know that.
early accident. It was funny, not funny, haha, but kind of random how things just full
Ironic,
circle.
yeah.
But he got hurt at Disneyland. He was a machinist, so he would build and maintain a lot of the rides. Well, he was up on the Matterhorn where you go up kind of side by side and you turn off.
Yeah.
So he was up on the track before they had catwalks. This was in, gosh, what year was this? It was 58, I think he got hurt, 58 or 59. But so they, the one operator, no, there's men on the track, don't send any cars. And then changed operators 8 o'clock at night. Now this new operator sent a car. Well, it sounds all the same because it's just changed.
Yeah.
Well, here comes a car. Hits my dad. He falls over 100 feet, hitting various structures on the way down, and somehow lived.
Oh my gosh!
But,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my kind of not just early, but my total riding career was almost sole. I was just on my own. My brother and another friend of my brother's, Kenny Lindemann. They're the ones who kind of allowed me to start racing. Because I was just a punk kid riding his BMX bike all day, every day. And so,
how much older was your brother? Like, could he drive?
Not early on. Well, he could drive because I really started riding, or my first race I was 14, so he would have been 17.
Okay.
Yeah, 17, 18. But, so our first adventure to the race was a Chevelle wagon with a 3-rail trailer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And on that very first day, which was quite funny, my brother was always, in a hurry, never quite kind of locking everything down. But we show up at the track, and his Elsinore 125 had fallen off, and we drug it for I don't know how long. But so the one side handlebar was about 2 inches shorter, and the one side foot peg and shifter were. He raced it
barely
that day.
there.
He raced it just like that, holding on to this little knob of a handlebar. But so that was our first adventure. And my dad only went to the races twice. He went early on to Escape Country and watched me, and then he went to one Supercross.
Wow.
And that was, obviously 10 years
Just
after
because it was tough for him to get around?
And by that time his health was declining, and so, we'd bring him cycle news and all that sort of stuff, but he was somewhat bedridden. Yeah, right when my career was, kind of in the meat.
Also, I think when you look back, if you got hurt at that point in time, if you look at the 60s and 70s and that, a lot of things weren't very accommodating to people in, wheelchairs and things like that. It's only sort of been the last 20, 30 years, I think, that it's like, oh, hey, we got to accommodate to these people.
Yeah, but so one of the things that oh, wow, you guys must be millionaires. Your dad got, handicapped by a major, Disney, and I think he got some settlement of $1,000 or something.
You're kidding.
No, it was like nothing.
Different time.
Totally different time before
if that
the lawyers.
Today,
exactly.
He owns Disneyland.
Yeah, we're all living on top of the hill.
At that time, it's like, it's your fault. You shouldn't have been up there.
Yeah, you
should have heard the car coming.
Why did you hear the car?
Rub some dirt on it. Get up.
Get up. You'll be fine. So kind of to the point of, the mini bikes and all that, he wasn't real active to take us, so we got to go like twice a year. We'd go up there, but so the rest of the time we were just booneying up and down our neighborhood street.
Was he? Did he help you work on bikes and stuff early on?
That was because he was an old drag racer.
Okay,
and so I was always around from little kid. I was always around engines and just fabricating. Because what he had done after his accident, he went back to work and he worked for Knott's Berry Farm and Sid and Marty Croft. If anyone knows that name, they did HR Puffin stuff, which was like a
HR Puffin stuff.
Yeah, so they had those little 6-wheel vehicles. Yeah, they had those like 6-wheel vehicles that they drove around, and they're all in costume and all that. Yeah, my dad built half of that stuff. So
is that right?
He was he was very instrumental, and that's where I think I kind of developed this sort of testing background knowledge thing, because I just understand working mechanical things very well from growing up and all that.
The show had a talking flute.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
What was it?
It's like crazy.
HR Puffin stuff.
Yeah, with a name like that, there's probably some hippie things going on.
Well, I was going to say, that name's done full circle. It's probably cool again. There's probably a store down the road called that right now.
Exactly. But so it just limited the amount that we went and rode and did all that until my brother was he was kind of instrumental in taking me to my first race because, of course, I was scared to death. I'm like, no, you got to be really good to race. So,
well, what was your first? You bought your first real bike was a
XR
80, right?
XR75 was my first real bike, the gray one, the one with the Elsinore shaped tank, because it was the 73 had the bubble tank and then the 74 had the sleek tank, but still, it was kind of a dark, almost a gunmetal metallic gray. And then, of course, I had the little flyer taped on my wall of the red one. The identical bike, they just painted it red, and I thought, oh my God, I gotta have that. Never got it, but that's okay. So in your first race, tell us about that, because if I understand that right, that didn't go great initially either. Well, yeah, because here my brother they would go racing. Him and my brother's Kurt, and then his buddy Kenny Linderman. They would go and race little local races and stuff. And so he said, "Oh, you should come and race." Well, they were riding for Premier Yamaha, or that's where they purchased their bikes and got the jersey. But on Beach Boulevard, down there in Huntington Beach, and so somehow this all happened kind of. Without my knowledge, hey, we're going to go racing and we got you a bike. And I'm like, well, I had ridden, so I'll give you a little Yamaha history here. So in 77, the Yamaha YZ80 was at the end of that era of technology. Well, 78, it was like a whole brand new thing. Monoshock, much better engine, suspension, everything. So I had my XR75, but I'd been riding my buddy's 78. And I'm like, oh, this thing is magic. Well, they had borrowed some way overtuned, tuned to a standstill, as comes to mind, the 77.
Okay.
Some old race bike that someone turned into Premier Yamaha. So we show up, and I ride the thing, and my buddy came along with the 78. And we're like, I told my brother after riding it in practice, I said, this thing's horrible. Jetting was bad. The forks bought. I said, this thing's just almost unrideable. So I talked my buddy, Colin Gibbons, into letting me race his bike. So I go out and I ride the first moto, and I'm like, well, I'm not a beginner, so I'll ride novice. That's because there's 4 classes back then: beginner, novice, intermediate, and expert. So I race his bike. And even in the novice class, I won by like a half a lap. And they're going, oh, okay, well, it was a 3-moto system. My only time, because 78 is right about when these things started changing. Okay. So second moto, same thing. Get out there, and I win by a long shot. So then the third moto, and here's a little more Yamaha, what was it? Wrench report stuff. Remember when Yamaha used to do that? Scheidler would cut 5 millimeters out of your pipe, and they would do a whole little thing, and they were doing development. Well, I didn't know that the 78 YZ80 had a poor frame design. It was the box type with the swing arm went on the outside. Okay. Well, apparently they sold a 7-piece gusset kit. Well, so about halfway through that third moto, chain comes off, goes through the case. I mean, literally destroys my friend's bike. Because that thing would start doing this. No. So I went 1-1 DNF in my first race, which ended up being kind of the story of my career as we get a little further down the road. Yeah. But so I felt so bad, destroyed my friend's bike, but went to Premier Yamaha, got the little gusset kit, and my buddy, Kenny Linderman, who he worked at a muffler shop, so they had a lot of welding there, and so got the thing up and going, and
you guys fixed it up?
Fixed it up.
How'd you fix the case?
I don't know what they did.
JB weld the heck out of it?
I don't know what they did, because that was kind of my brother and his friend that sort of took care of the whole thing, but got it all back together for my friend, and off we went. And then just a few months after that,
what was the race? I thought you did a race and you forgot your gear.
So that was my very first pro race.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I can jump ahead, but you got mad at me the last time, so I'll patiently sit here.
Pig will lean over and whoop your ass if you jump ahead.
Yeah, that's why I got you between us.
Did you see? He has a list. He has a list.
Well, I like to keep it in chronological order. I'm a little OCD.
He's borderline OCD.
Yeah, okay, borderline.
Okay. So you pretty much killed your first race. Mm-hmm. And then killed the bike.
And then killed my friend's bike.
So in an 11-month span, you go from the novice class to the expert class, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's your first pro race. Take us through that. So 80 expert.
So 80 expert. Now this was my forgot the gear was 125 pro.
Okay.
But yeah, I went from right around that May, June, back around to April. World Mini Grand Prix at Saddleback Park. So I'd only been racing for about 11 months.
World Minis at Saddleback?
Yeah, back then they did.
Then Indian Dunes, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
Indian Dunes as well. So I rode.
Hey, I would skip school to go to that because they would have it in April, and they would have it throughout the week. And I went to Orange High School, so me and buddies would go up there and just skip school and just go watch. I didn't race it.
Is that what happened to you?
Oh,
Yeah, that explains a lot.
pretty much.
That wasn't the only time you skipped school, was it?
No, not the only time.
So yeah, I show up and I don't know
what were you
anything
riding?
about all this.
Still on that 77?
No, the same
Okay.
78 because
Okay.
I got for my birthday in June. I'd got a 78
Oh, okay.
YZ80.
All right.
And so rode that, loved
With
it.
the kit?
You know.
With the...
We gusseted it straight
Okay,
away.
okay.
Yeah, straight away. And but yeah, it was a great bike. You know, just
That made you a good tester. You're like, we learned from our mistake. We're moving forward.
yeah, because I've got a little offshoot story of probably January, February or something. My brother decides he gets I think it was Terry Cable or somebody sent or sold this kit that was a longer damper rod. So now you had longer suspension. Do
Okay.
you remember those kits?
No.
So in the old fork, you know, your damper rod is where the bolt screwed in,
Yeah.
and so that's what kept the fork together. Well, if you just made a longer rod, now you had longer suspension.
The bike looked funny. It looked like it was jacked up. It was really
Well,
funny looking.
But then I also got a Thor swing arm and a Kernut shot.
Kernut, I remember that.
I think something like that. So the whole thing was raised up. Wasn't very good,
Like
but
a monster truck.
my brother thought it was a great idea. So we go down to Verona Oaks for a race, and I'm ripping around there, and I can't remember who I was battling with, but it was for the lead. And we're racing around, and a little bit of dust, and just going, and all of a sudden, I do the smallest jump and just crash my brains out, right? I'm like, oh, I must have hit a rock or something. So I run over to my bike to pick it up, and the front wheel is over there with the two lower fork legs.
Oh,
and
no.
the two damper rods are folded under the fork legs because
Got too long and there was
no. My brother, again, always in a hurry, the bolts came out. So the forks came apart.
Yikes.
And so it was a lot of those little trial and errors along the way. I think for everyone, you know, I can't pick on my brother. He did everything. He was the greatest guy. He got me so far in my racing because he had a job and had money. You know, our family, and my dad lived on Social Security and, you know, doing odd brake jobs and little weird things. But so just along that technology road, so we put the stock damper rods back in after that. But so yeah, come along April. Whatever level that bike was by that time, but we went there and raced, and it's just like I was blown away. I'd never seen a race like that. I'd been doing little, you know. Actually, that was the first time I'd ever been to Saddleback because we just went to Scape Country because it was close to the house, and that's just, you know, you just kind of out of habit, you'd go there. And
So how big was the World Mini at that point? I mean, like...
that was huge. We had to ride qualifiers.
1,000 riders?
Oh, at least, because we had to ride
okay.
qualifiers. I was 80 expert. You know, it was like George Holland and Eric Kehoe were the two top guys at that time.
Okay.
And so I don't remember all the other names. I should go back and look at it because I probably beat a lot of fairly good guys. But I got, when my bike didn't break, because I think I had a sprocket come loose and come apart. I had a couple things throughout the day, but I got a couple of thirds behind those two guys. And I remember like, it was probably the point I realized, oh, you know, this is not, I might actually be able to do this, you know, as a path to something, you know.
So you
who knows
didn't-
what we were all trying to do. But
The bigger size of the event, you didn't get freaked out at all? I mean, you still performed, it sounds like.
It was funny because I was freaked out in practice because I didn't know the track and I'm riding around just lost. But then one of them, I think it was Kehoe, come by me and I'm like, oh, I'll just latch onto that guy, and that really helped me. And so then, because you had like 27 practices, because you know the way those events were ran. So then I learned quickly, hey, and I think the other one, maybe like Sam Storer, was a KX80 kid. He was also pretty good. So I would sit beside the edge of the track and wait for one of those fast guys to come by, and I would jump on behind him and just ride until I either fell or they just pulled away from me. But steep learning curve, that was for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I grew up racing in Montana, and the first big event I ever went to was the World Mini, but this was out in Henderson when it moved out there. It would have been 85, and it blew my mind, you know. Just all the pageantry of it, all the factories there. They had, you know, Cowie would bring their guy, all the teams would bring their factory riders. Like, it was just a whole nother world for me.
Yeah.
And I was my ass was just puckered shut like this. I rode terrible. I'd get a whole shot, and just people were just blowing by me.
Yeah.
So-
I think that was
I
later.
remember that feeling. That was my first race in the U.S. I did the World Minis in '96, and racing with Marley, Pastrana, Buckaloo. Buckaloo was the man on the Super Mini at the time.
Oh yeah, at that time he was like almost untouchable.
Yeah. But it was funny. Same thing. I came over and I was like, "Holy shit!" I'd never seen a semi truck at a track ever, and to see them just lined up, and I'm like, my dad's like, "This is not even the pros." I was like, "Whoa!" Like this is nuts. Like in South Africa, we go to the pro races, and like something similar to a sprinter would be like full factory.
Yeah.
And so to go to an amateur race and see that and that amount of people, it's just like we had never seen anything.
Well, yeah,
like
I was used to racing in gates with maybe 5-10 guys.
Same.
So
Yeah, and that
like
was,
you're saying, 40-man gates, and then there's 3 or 4 qualifiers of them.
You would tell your buddy, dude, I went down the first turn and I still won. Yeah, you passed 6 guys.
yeah. 2 of them didn't even have a visor on their helmet.
Exactly.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack
Well,
you
no,
there.
but
So
it's so true. I think I kind of learned later once I almost thought, hey, I could win this race, whatever it happened to be. I think that's when the pressure came to me because back then I was just almost so naive and determined.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I think carried me through a lot of situations. That I had a little more determination than most of the people that I was racing against.
Yeah.
So I think that carried me through the first little while, and then it was later when I'd won the first moto and rolling up to the second moto of whatever event. Then that was like,
now the pressure's on.
I got to do this again.
Yeah.
Can't we just call it after that? I won the other one. Aren't we over?
So Kehoe and Holland, you mentioned. Who were the other like top guys at that time? Do you remember?
So there was like what I mentioned, Sam Storer. There was a shop down on Chapman Avenue that had some of the top kids. I think they were all on Suzukis at that time.
Okay.
And like Tracy Meeks comes to mind. He was another Cowie, like a Team Green guy. I'm trying to think who else.
Bunch.
Rick
Bruce
Hemme
Bunch.
and Bunch and all
Yeah.
them. They were a little bit behind me. Like, I was already on 125s when those guys were like the whole show.
What about in the pro class? Who were like the guys you were looking up to at that time?
So at that time, Bob Hanna was...
He was the man.
Yeah, he was the man. And then, you'd follow Brad Lackey because he was in the GPs and that. We all just rushed down to get our cycle news and we would just pour over every word. And then if you ever made a little picture or a mention in Western Hotline, because that was always the California races, and so it was funny because Orange County Cycle on Harbor Boulevard, they were close enough because Cycle News was down in Long Beach. And somebody would drive down because they would come out on a Wednesday, but they were available Tuesday off print. And someone would drive down and they would literally be 40 people waiting for that guy to drive back with the
right?
Cycle News. And we'd all grab our copy and because we hoped we made some little picture from the local Saturday saddleback race.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, shoot, even as a pro, you're always like, I got a picture in here. Like, it's so exciting.
Well,
to
we
see.
all got egos of some level. Maybe not you, Grant, but David.
No, yeah, Grant definitely.
No, not at all. No, I remember the first time I saw myself on the cover of Cycle News. It was kind of like, yep, that's what you get when you win a Supercross. Like walking around the house.
Look at that.
Hey, I
chairs.
worked at Orange County Cycle for a little while.
No, did you?
Yeah.
Bill? Was Bill the owner?
He was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, he absolutely.
was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, Davin was the parts manager.
Davin Melendez. I still talk to Davin every
and
once
Saul,
in a while.
And Saul was the service manager.
Saul's still around. Saul's
I know.
a
I
Yamaha
see him all the time.
employee,
I talk to him all the time.
Yeah, Saul's great. It's funny whenever I see Saul. For a while there, it was always some old story, and now I just say hi because that's a little bit distant. But it's interesting. All these people that have lasted in the industry that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like once you get in, people don't leave.
No, it's
Hey,
tough.
that was the hub of that. Orange County Cycle was like a hub of racing for Orange County. Like everybody that had anything to do with Yamaha would go there.
Love him or not, Davin did a great job.
Yeah.
He always had the parts. This guy, Davin Melendez, he's still kind of around in some ways. I don't know if he's living in Florida or California at any given time, but just a great, passionate guy, and Bill just gave him, here you go. There's enough rope. Try not to hang yourself. But, he would stock everything, so that was the go-to place. and then they had that little Yamaha support thing that you could, get a bike, buy one and get one, however it all worked. But yeah, I had some Yamahas through those guys.
Get a free
years.
set of grips and a couple
Something
stickers.
like that, yeah.
We need to go back to that.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, all right, when did you get onto the 125 then?
So pretty much soon after that World Mini thing, because I was getting big on the bike, and that was before Super Minis. Everyone was still on the 14, 17-inch wheels. So
and there was no 100 cc's at that time?
There was a 100cc class, but it was just basically a sleeve down 125.
Oh, okay.
So it just, there was a gap, and and that's obviously where Super Mini kind of filled in years later. But so I got on a 125 in kind of mid 79 when excuse me, when the 79s came out, YZ 125, and back then they were still the oddball that would try and stay in the intermediate class and win, collect his trophies. But all of us, or at least me, I was in such a hurry to get to the pro class because I've worked mowing lawns. I did everything to afford racing. I wanted to make money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I spent 6 weeks on a 125 racing the intermediate class. I tried to sign up a novice because I was kind of afraid. I'm like, wow, these guys are big, this bike's big and all that. But I said, no, if you were an expert on an 80, you have to ride at least intermediate. You can't drop down to all that stuff. But so I went on a big winning spree. I think the only intermediate race I ever lost was when I had a bike problem. But back then you could race just about every day of the week. Night races, you'd go to and OCIR, Orange County International Raceway, which is now long gone, but I think it's the Great Park now, or at least part of the Great Park over there. But
off of Sand Canyon.
Yeah. So we would go there, and I grew up there as a kid. My brother, I would hang out with him. He'd hand out the ET slips in that little booth after you did your run. So, I grew up at that place. And then when they had a night motocross, I'm like, oh, this is great. So we would go and race there. But I was at least one night a week, sometimes two, and then Saddleback Saturday, and then any other race you could find on
racing
Sunday.
that much?
I was racing at least 3 times a week, sometimes 4. Jeez. But my brother and his buddy Kenny, they had money because they had jobs, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I loved racing.
Corona Friday night?
Yeah, I did some of those, but they were a little scary. You had a 300-foot straightaway with a couple of 90-watt light bulbs dangling in the wind, blowing around.
So you do.
When you got out of the main stadium, like they had a little, I think it was just a short track.
It was a short track, yeah.
So, but when you went up on the hill, you might as well close your eyes. It was that black out there in the hills. So practice was good. First moto, second moto, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. So you could do Ascot Wednesday night, OCI Thursday, Friday was Corona, then SMX on Saturday, and then CMC on Sunday.
Anything, CRC, CMC, wherever. Yeah. And especially once I turned pro, you were just digging through the cycle news, who's got a purse, You just chase those purses around. But so anyway, I went quickly through the intermediate class. So then now we're at the Forgot My Gear race. So I was so excited to ride my first pro race, Saddleback Saturday. And I'm like, oh, God, everything's going to be perfect. And I'm out there, waxing my used tire and trying to, make everything as good as I could, washing my gear, had it sitting right on the dryer, everything. So we were so anxious in the morning. We leave, we get to the track. I got no gear. So I ride practice in just a T-shirt and jeans. I had my boots and helmet and all that. And so we call my dad. He gets in the car to bring it. Well, and I think this is why I had nightmares for, I don't know, still today, of missing practice. So, because I got practice, but my dad shows up before the race, and I'm running around trying to get this gear on. It's like a bad nightmare. Your foot won't go through your pants, or your boot won't buckle. Yeah, well, I've got some real, foundation for having that nightmare. But so I remember it was so funny. My brother was so mad. He's standing on the start with my bike, and here I come running up, from a 100-yard dash. And, there goes the gate. And then my brother's standing. He's the only guy there, obviously, with a bike. And I run up. He lets it go. It falls, and I run, pick it up. He was so pissed at me.
He let it fall.
He let it fall, and I go. And there's only 4 guys. Yeah, I can remember. It was Bobby Sullivan, if you ever remember that guy. Chris Heiser, do you remember him? He was famous for being the first girl, or the first guy to ever, how would you say, have intimate relations with Heather Locklear. And I think even not
Was
too
that
long
right?
ago, well, I don't watch TV much, but somebody told me recently, like maybe a year ago, that all this, what are those shows where it's
reality?
Yeah, not reality, but it's like all the, anyway, where Heather's in trouble and this guy and they're fighting and doing all this stuff on the stupid shows.
Okay.
It was Chris.
Is that right?
Yeah, so they're still kind of on and off again. I guess Heather's kind of a mess. I don't know, but so
He's a legend. I need to meet this guy.
Yeah, so Chris Heiser, because I guess they went to high school together down in Newport Beach or something.
Okay.
But and then I think it was Pat Hubbs and myself. So there's only 4 of us. So I catch up and I beat 2 of them, so I get second in the first moto, and I'm like happy. And so the second moto, well, somebody breaks and I win, so I won my first race, whopping like $35. But so that was my first pro race. Saddleback Saturday was missing the start.
I love it. So, and now, did you have a job at that point, or did you?
At that point, I was still
Still in school.
No, not really. At that point, I was going to continuation school because I was kind of the equivalent of homeschooling.
Okay.
I would go to a night school so I could ride and stuff. And so that I was probably just turned 17, but I had my own vehicle at that point. Anyone that knew me around Saddleback, it was the purple Datsun.
Okay.
This old beater truck, the old beater truck. But it got me to the races, and so that was. And then at that point forward, I parlayed that $35 that I made at Saddleback that day into huge money down the road. Not, but that's what we did. We raced 3-4 times a week, and and then a little bit later. I don't want to get too far ahead. What's your next question here?
Steady.
Easy.
Pump your brakes now.
Well, no, just kind of between that and your first national that you raced, what was going on? Just a lot of local racing and...
Yeah, so, that was 79 that I had my first race. And so I was a local kid because I didn't have the money to go do the big races. Go Texas and all the spring or any of the amateur races, Ponca City, all that kind of stuff. They didn't even enter my mind, so I just stayed locally. Well, so in '82, I did my first national. I went to Carlsbad.
Okay.
And that was quite an interesting experience. That's when everybody had these giant front number plates.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, maybe they were progressing too far, whatever it was, but I had a square front number plate. And by this time, I was on the famous Suzukis, because I've been a Yamaha guy my whole life, but for a short period I rode these Suzukis.
Okay.
Because in 81, 82, it was like a cheating if you rode an RM125 versus any of the other bikes.
Is that right? Or was that good?
81, 82, 83. 84 was a new bike.
Yeah. But so that short period I was on Suzuki's, and it was because my Yamahas at that time, I had a lot of failures. Well, I think whatever happened first moto, but my bike broke, and I borrowed my buddy's bike, and we put some electrical tape numbers, and we went out there, and I absolutely smashed these guys that I was battling with in the first moto. Second moto, I smashed them. I'm like, that's not even fair. So I went and bought at Orange County Suzuki, the Cavness brothers, Steve and Scott Cavness. I went and bought a used RM125 in 82. This was probably the beginning of 83 or maybe midway through 83. But I bought a used RM125, $550. And on that single bike, I won more races because I rode it for probably 18 months. And it was a test of my mechanical abilities because I had that thing, the cases were so wore out, the main bearings were like swimming. So I learned from my dad, hey, just pin those things, So we were grinding the main bearing, dropping it in, and then drilling and banging a roll pin. I mean, we hit like everything to patch that thing together, but I won more. It was funny. I wish I still had it, but I had like a sheet of paper. It started out, it's like a plan ahead, and nice big, and then by the end it had all these little amounts all just tucked in everywhere, but I kept how much money I made each week on this bike. It'd be OCIR $35 or, Saddleback Saturday $80 or whatever, and it was just funny. I wish I still had that piece of paper, but
It'd be great
that
to frame
bike.
It. Yeah.
Paid for itself a
That
few
bike
times
paid
over,
for itself a few times over and really kind of opened some of the doors for me. But so my story, sorry, I skipped ahead. Scoot back here so it doesn't take a swing at me. So I go down to do the Carlsbad National. I drive all the way down when Tech was at the hospital. You know, it's Carlsbad, and I live in Orange County. The guy, he gets out the tape measure. Your numbers are too far above your front fender, whatever the rule was. And I'm like, what? I mean, there's guys that that was back at the time they were laying them up over. Johnny
That's when they took all
O'Mara's
the
bike
stock ones off and put the big.
But so, stupid side note, but I drive all the way back to probably Orange County Cycle, and I need a different number plate or something, and all that sort of stuff. But so I go to that national, and I'm literally on my own again. By this time, my brother and I were at odds, and just things weren't too good. So I bring my one buddy down there, and so I go out in the first moto, and I'm ripping around there. I don't know. I got a decent start, and I'm just riding around. Well, my buddy never showed me any pit signs because he was in the beer line. He's over there having a good time watching the races. This was the only time I ever rode 40-minute moto, too, because that was in 82. There were still 40s. I'm riding around. I'm just dead tired. You know, I'm night moto guy or
10, 15-minute motos.
So just almost towards the end, I think I'd had the 2-lap board, and I'm like, okay. And somebody's pressuring me. I'm like, oh, God. And I look back, and it's Jeff Ward, and I'm like, huh. So I move out of the way, and I let Jeff Ward by. I figure he's lapping me, right? So I go later, and I look. Yeah, Jeff Ward got 10th. I got 11th in that first moto. And I'm
Dang.
like, son of a bitch. I shouldn't have let that guy by. But I was good at Carlsbad because I grew up racing there, you know, for years and years and years. But he must have had a bad start or crashed or done something. Probably crashed, not just a bad start, that he's passing me at the 39-minute mark. So second moto, bike failure, didn't even finish. But that was my first national.
11th.
82 Carlsbad, 11 DNF.
Huh. That's pretty dang good, though, 11th.
Not too bad.
Especially with no pit board and in the purple Datsun.
It was absolutely purple Datsun. But so 83, I didn't ride any because when Saddleback came, I had an injury. I've actually got a couple pictures of me riding in practice, and that was it because I did something to my ankle, and I rode practice, and I never raced.
83 was
83 was just one. So then 84. And by this time, 84, I'm working 40-hour a week, a real job.
What were you doing?
It was a place that made the big glass windows for storefront or like big banks that looked like a glass cube. We did that system, which is called curtain wall. So I would run a lot of punch presses and radial saws and just things. Yeah. My brother got me the job there. So I was working full-time, still racing tons. I'd go to work with the bike in the back and ask if I could leave early to beat the traffic up to Ascot or whatever we were doing. And so 84 Golden State, gnarly, if you can remember. I mean, it was...
Might as well be a national.
Well, yeah, I remember. I can picture it just like it was yesterday. Santa Maria, Golden State. It was the last round. Jeff Ward, Factory Cali, he rode, I think it was Houston Supercross or whatever the night before, flies in a helicopter and lands so he can secure the 125 championship on his, fact. So
that's crazy. So that's how important the Golden State Series was.
That's how important the Golden State was back then. I'm just like, oh my gosh,
that was a sand track. I was there.
That was really a cool track. I drive by there all the time to go. My mom lives up in Atascadero, and every time, my kids are tired. Hey, there was a Golden State. And like,
they didn't ride that track very much. That track was not.
I think it was like they just put it in.
They just put it in. Yep.
For that event, and there's a whole other funny Mike Byer story to that day, but we'll skip that for now. So. I got laid off from my job. They cut like 40% of the workforce, and everyone was gone the week before that Golden State. So I remember being at that Golden State, and Mike Byer needed something to get like maybe second or third in the series, and so but anyway, through the whole day, they were telling me, "Oh yeah, we're going to Florida for the first national next week," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, good luck. That sounds like fun, but I'll be home. I got to go find another job or whatever." And he goes, "Oh, you should go with us." I'm like, "Oh no, I took a crack and I did okay at the one I did, and blah 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 blah." "Oh no, you should come," because I beat him that day, and I didn't beat him very often. I beat him that day. He's like, you should go," and I'm like, ah. So I had a little bit of money just because I was working full time and whacking back those $35 a night at Ascot's. And
just racking them up.
Yeah, big money. So I ended up going. I said, all right, yeah, I think I even bought a new rear tire and drove all the way to Florida not by myself. I went with Mike, but it was him and his mechanic and me. So I went there with no mechanic, signed up the morning of the race like you used to be able to do.
Yeah. Is that Gatorback?
Gainesville. Yeah, never been there before, obviously.
Yeah.
And so Mike, his mechanic, Ted Cabral, still, crazy funny guy. And he goes, okay, well, I can kind of help you. If you guys are not in the same heat race, then I can, of course, Mike and I are in the same heat race. They're like, oh, okay, well, we'll just deal with it. And so, of course, Mike and I go 1-2. He won. I got second in the heat race.
Okay.
So he's like, he'd go, it was simple. You guys were like trying to kill each other. I just put the pit board out. This many laps.
Just hold it out a little longer.
So then, first moto comes around, I'm like, okay, I got my bike leaned against the fence. I'm over there fixing my start spot. I had a pretty good pick because I got second in I think there was 3 heats back then. I mean, there's freaking 140 guys or something trying to qualify for the National. So we do the whole thing. I get a decent start, and I'm just riding my brains out. And who do I end up racing with? Mike Byer.
Yeah.
So we're going around there, and I don't know, I'm passing some guys I'd never heard of before. I'm 298. I was the price tag. That's what they donned my number as the price tag. And so we're ripping around there. And I kind of, after the race, was probably 15, 20 minutes in, I'm like, I think I'm doing pretty good. Because I started seeing, because I was actually catching Mike, I started seeing his pit boards. He was in 4th. And I'm like, holy crap. So I'm going, and this is the story that will last forever. So they were at Gainesville that year. You come off the kind of the last drop-off. You went up and down that wall a few times, and then you went into that little man-made section, and then by the finish line. So there was kind of a groove cut in. Right after you come off that last drop, there was just a low line. That the jump almost didn't exist, and then everything else was kind of big. And so kind of had an opportunity to take him down, but I needed to ride home from Florida. So, and that's how it stands forever and ever. But so he got, and it's funny because the mechanic said that I went, like, my ears must have been popping because I still tried to hit the jump at his speed, and he went the low line, and I guess I was, I don't remember, there. I was just wanted to beat my friend. But so I went out and got 5th in my first real national moto. This is pretty good because that was a year that it was just 2 factory guys that were gone. Every moto they went 1-2. O'Mara and Jeff Ward. Okay. So those 2 guys went 1-2 in every moto. So the rest of us were really trying to get 3rd.
Who was 3rd in that race?
So in that race, I think it was. So I'll give you kind of the list of people. It was Rick Ryan, AJ Whiting, and I think Gary Bowman. Those 3 might have been the Suzuki kind of factory guys, even though they're kind of production-based bikes. They weren't true factory bikes. And then Yamaha, Mike Byer was he ended up getting 3rd that year.
In the championship?
In the championship, yeah. Not too many people remember
what
that.
What about Keith Bowen?
So Bowen he might have been on a 250 that year. Because I think the following year, 85, he was on a 125. Number 14 in that photo I showed you. But I don't remember Bowen much from there. But Guy Cooper, because it was his rookie year also. So he was number 107 on a Honda.
Jeez.
And then Kehoe, I think he might have been one of the Suzuki guys then.
But it was a talented field.
Yes.
So to get 5th,
deep.
What were you riding? Were you on a Yamaha again?
No, I was still on that used beat-up Suzuki.
No way.
Well, no, actually, I borrowed a bike from Jody Weissel, one of his MXA test bikes, so a fairly stock Suzuki. Mitch put a pipe on it and did a little something. But yeah, I was on a borrowed bike. They let me ride it through Golden State because I didn't really have the money to buy my own. But yeah, so I took that same bike down to Gainesville.
Jeez. Now, did you get the suspension and stuff valved back then? Or?
Not really. I think Enzo did that bike. And another funny, stupid Enzo, or me, poor, broke, riding junk bikes. One day at Saddleback, I got like 2nd or 3rd in one of those big, Saddleback 5,000. It was a $5,000 pro purse, and you had to ride qualifiers just to get in the pro main motos. And I think I got 3rd or 4th behind some real fast guys. And I remember I took my suspension down to Ross, and I'm like, hey, this thing seems loose. It was the reservoir had that long hose, and then it was up under the tank. Well, apparently it had no nitrogen in it. And I told him, this thing's been kind of loose. So with no nitrogen, that cap didn't have the pressure to hold it against the little ring. And I go, that thing, it's been like that for a few days now. And he's like, you raced it like that? And I'm like, yeah, I got like third yesterday. And he's like, oh my God, what an idiot. And I told him it bottomed a lot and it didn't handle very well. So that was the beginning of my testing, I guess. But so
a little nitrogen, you were a happy man.
Yeah, after he fixed it up, I was like, and that was when I first met Ross. He was in a little shop over by the river trail down in Santa Ana. Somebody said, hey, this is the guy you need to, go and see. And that was 83 on my 82 Suzuki. But so I was on a borrowed bike at that national as well.
So maybe getting let go was the best thing that ever happened to you. It kind of pushed you out the door.
Well, I've said that 1,000 times, that was really what sparked me to, because, going down there, and it's funny, so second moto, I washed my bike, which I never really did, and I must have got water in the carb, because I go second moto Gainesville, down, like you drop down the pit, right about there, thing dies. So I'm sitting on the side of the track, kick, and I'm like, almost threw my hands up, and I'm like, I'll try it again. And I couldn't even hear the bike, so that's how far the pack was. Got the bike running, got going, and came all the way from a distant 40th to get 12th in that second moto. So I got 9th overall, so I was in the top 10 going to Hangtown. So at that point, I said, I can't go get another job. I'm top 10 in
I'm kind
American.
Of a big deal.
I'm a pretty big deal. But that was one of those things. So the defining moments, you think, what if I would have never got laid off? I would have just kept working and riding local race stuff, likely. So that was weird. Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. So did you do the whole series that year?
So I did the whole series, and obviously Saddleback was easy to go to. Of course, I was sick as a dog, flu. I don't know, it's probably anxiety, going, I'm in the top 10. I got to go race again. Can't we just quit now? Because I felt pretty good at that other place. But did that, sick as a dog. I think I was somewhere 12th or something, not that good. Went to Hangtown, had a pretty good one. By the time we needed to kind of head back east, I had, kind of got a mechanic, sort of just a kid that was willing to drive with me. And when did we drive that first? I think we were just still in my pickup truck. Went to, some of those. And then later, we got a trailer because, so stuff didn't get rained on or stolen or whatever. But so throughout that, I think
those
it
were like
was
the cool trailers back then.
I might not have been that cool. It might have been some other off-brand, to be honest.
Brandon Sperling's dad owned it. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
he owned a pallet company too.
So, and throughout that year, I had these really good rides where I'd get like a 5th or something, and then bike would break or something, and I'd get a DNF. But I was battling with Guy Cooper for that Rookie of the Year honor thing.
Okay.
And he and I would we actually became good friends then. We're still, to this day, but, because he was much like me. They drove some sedan with a 3-rail trailer for half the year, him and Jane are driving around doing pretty much the same thing I was. And so that was kind of it was just such a big learning curve. But I remember sort of another defining point of that year was Millville. Obviously I've never been to any of these tracks before. So I go to Millville and first moto, I'm ripping around there and I'm just it's still one of my favorite tracks today. And, catch up, pass this guy, pass that guy. I'm like, man, I'm feeling pretty good. Hottest, humid day. But I didn't know. I'm like, well, I'm passing these guys pretty easily. So I got like 6th in the first moto. Feeling pretty good. I think I passed Rick Ryan and, just a handful of guys that are like factory guys. And I'm still in a sedan and a trailer. And so second moto, same thing. I'm like, man, I'm feeling pretty good. Past Beyer, past, AJ Whiting, past all these guys. I get into third. Third was like winning a moto because Johnny and Jeff were already somewhere else on the track. But so I'm going around there and I'm like, this is unbelievable. I get the 2-lap board and I think Guy Cooper was the last guy I passed. And because we were like neck and neck for that Rookie of the Year thing. Well, so this is his account because I don't remember much of it. Well, you being a paramedic, you probably know what dehydration and heat exhaustion does to you. You have some really cool dreams. So he tells me, that I rode, like just went right through a banner and pulled up under a shade tree, and I just laid my bike down. I don't remember any of that. I woke up in an ambulance, and I'm packed in ice. And I'm like, you can see the guy was sitting in there kind of monitoring me, but his back was turned. I'm like, I must have had the biggest crash ever, and I'm wiggling my toes and my fingers, and I'm like, oh, everything seems to work. Oh, nothing hurts. And the guy's like, oh, you're awake. Okay. He kind of starts talking to me and stuff. Well, somewhere in between laying my bike down under a shade tree and waking up talking to this guy, I was having crazy hallucinations.
Yeah.
So this was my hallucination, was that a pack of bikers, it's almost funny to tell the story. So this pack of bikers is trying to inject me with drugs because they wanted to do something or other. And it was apparently when they were trying to admit an IV.
Yeah.
So I'm like, would act all calm. And then when they'd get close, I'd go, and I'd be like screaming. And so it was Guy Cooper's wife, Jana, apparently came over, and she was hot. We all were like drooling over her. She came over, and I saw her, and I'm like, oh. And I guess I just put my arm out, and they IV'd me and all that. But I was having the most crazy hallucinations.
That's funny.
So that pretty much took 20 points away from me.
Yeah.
And so that it hurt me. I think we were right around 7th and 8th guy we were battling. So there's 2 races after that, Colorado, altitude, and 1 week after heat exhaustion and vomiting up, orange Gatorade the whole week. But flat that day and flat at Washougal. I ended up 10th overall for the year, which was great, but I think Guy ended up 7th and got that Rookie of the Year deal.
Were you not, like, with a few laps to go, were you not thinking, man, I'm really hot and tired?
I think I just pushed past it. Because that's what I say. My determination has got me in trouble several times, and I think that was the first indicator that my mind was willing to push myself beyond what my body could handle.
Wow, man.
Yeah, I just went to the point that I shut down and looked for a shade tree, I guess. I don't know.
Apparently.
I was probably in the hallucinations.
Well, at that point, everyone handles things a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's just
when
interesting.
I had heat stroke, I remember I was trying to do motos, and we're out at that old... was it MX compound or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
And it was super hot, and we were doing 40-minute motos one day, and I remember I was just like not used to the California heat, and I rode up, and I pulled off. My dad's like, we had 1 lap to go, and I guess I just rode up, and he said I just collapsed off the bike.
Just shut down.
And I just remember him slapping me all the way to the hospital. You got to stay conscious. I'm like, stop hitting me.
Yeah, it's heat exhaustion.
That place was tough. That place was whooped out and nasty.
Yeah, before the outdoors, I was doing 40-minute motos there. 3. I think I tried to do 3 the one day, and it didn't work out.
Maybe kind of exceeded the limit.
I think maybe that's where we're a little bit similar. I've pushed through some tough times too.
Yeah.
So you weren't even in a box van at that point. You were still in a truck or a trailer.
Yeah.
All right.
But now, did you not have factories come and talk to you during the season, or go, hey man?
Well, see, that was the thing that I've never been great at promoting myself. Even to this day, I'm not a big social media guy. Hey, look at me, kind of thing. And I just back then was under the assumption, the hard work and the results, people will see. So nothing, And I didn't ride any other races, no Supercrosses, anything like that. And I think I'm convinced another one of those things. If I didn't cook at Millville, and I would have been more of that, because Guy Cooper landed a nice Honda deal for the next year, well supported through Honda, and I ended up, back home just doing this and that, and not really in the limelight. And then as races came around, Mitch helped me. When he was in the old carpet shop down there in Anaheim, I would hang around with him and go test his stuff and just do whatever.
Yeah.
And so he's like, we'll get you a bike and we'll do this and that. And according to Mitch, this is a great story. I was going to come down here when you guys had your live show with him and just heckle him because, we've had a lot of history, Mitch and I. But if you listen to Mitch's version of the story, he had me a full Honda factory ride, full semi before semis existed. Big salary, 2 girlfriends. He sold it.
He really took care of you.
But what it actually was is Honda gave him a 125 test bike to develop because they were so bad in '85.
Okay.
And so
Really? I thought.
no, 85 125 was not very good.
Okay.
So I wrote it, and I think at that point he was trying so hard he actually tuned it to a standstill, because I wrote a buddy of mine's that was a stalker, and I think it ran better than what Mitch had been working on for a while. But so I ended up back on the Suzuki again, borrowed a magazine bike from Jody, and went to Gainesville, the first national. Yeah, okay, just kind of mixed. And then I came back home, and Jim Castillo was helping Mike Brown, the flying Mike Brown, not the. Yeah. And so he had bought him some Cowies and one of the old Cowie box vans. So I went to the second race at Hangtown on a Cowie. Jim had, we looked factory because we had one of Cowie's old box vans, and all still painted up Cowie. We had Cowies out the back, and so it looked all good. But it was Jim Castillo funded the whole thing. So I did that for that year, up and down. The bikes were okay, but just no organization, and it was a rough year. Well, I still had some good motos here or there, popped some fifths or eighths or something in there, and so. Partway through the year, Mike Guerra said, "Hey, would you like to ride some Yamahas for 86?" I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So Joe Melton, I already mentioned, so he was my mechanic that year because I think he had broke his foot or something, was off work. So he's like, "Oh yeah, I can drive the truck and pretend to change the air filter." I was like mechanic and rider, but he was the transport driver. Yeah. But so we were on the East Coast. I remember we went to Pensacola, New Jersey, some Yamaha warehouse, and got a crate of YZ125 because it was 2 per crate. And there's a whole lot of stories about that whole adventure that week leading up. But we went to Millville, so where that thing was, that picture I showed you at the start. So that was my first week on that bike. And so that was kind of the beginning of kind of the rest of my Yamaha career. I started on a Yamaha and rode those for several years, had a little stint of Suzuki's and a really brief Cowie run. I think I did 6 races on a Cowie or something like that. And then I ended up on a Yamaha. And then
so you raced 3 different brands at one season.
In one season, yeah. Yeah, that's what when you call desperate and privateer.
Did you disconnect the Bass system on that 86?
The Yamaha? Yeah. The brake-assisted suspension system?
Yep.
Yeah.
Had a little cable that went down to the rear brake.
But I don't think it was on the 125.
I thought it was.
I think it was on the 250 and 4... whatever the 490 was. Was it 490 then?
It was 490.
Yeah, the Bassmaster. Yeah, we did, but I don't remember it being on the 125.
It was supposed to open the compression circuit.
Yeah, it was supposed to open the compression under braking.
Under braking, yeah.
Yeah, so you could go over the bars for sure, not just maybe.
Everybody would disconnect them.
That was before I was a test rider. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah,
because I came along by testing, and that's what really started opening the doors for me. Once I got on the Yamaha, I started, it's funny, Scheidler loves to tell the story every time I call him, a typical guy that's, loves to tell old stories, but every single time I call him, "Do you remember the day at Mammoth? You came up to me, you sat right on my bumper and said, 'Give me a shot, I want to be a test rider.'" And sure enough, that's pretty much how it happened.
That's how it went down?
Yeah, it went down, and so I was about mid-'86 that... all that happened, and so I've been there ever since.
And Ed, for people who don't know, he's kind of the testing guy at Yamaha, the development guy behind the scenes.
Yeah, he was the original testing guy because he was there so long when testing we became a big part of Japan's development is through those years. And, Ed was very instrumental because he was absolutely crazy and very driven to make sure that things were, the way they should be. So, yeah, he was pretty crazy. But, so I've skipped ahead again. Please, how many mulligans do I have here? Because I think I've used.
You're running out. You're running out.
I've way
and we're still on the front 9.
Yeah, exactly. Just I don't want to get too far ahead, but so the whole 85, 86 season. This was right when 125 Supercross had come in.
Oh, that's right. Okay, 85, right?
So I got bikes from Yamaha with
and you hadn't done any Supercross prior to this at all?
No, I tried Anaheim. In 84, 85, I borrowed a friend's 250 Suzuki, and that was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah. Rolling
down the tunnel. Never seen a Supercross track other than in pictures and that, and trying to, And I did, I think, LA Coliseum in that same year. And I actually was somewhat close to qualifying and managed to meet up with a hay bale and it didn't end so well. But so 85, I rode one 125 Supercross because I think 85 was her first year of 125 Supercross.
Sounds about right.
So I'd come in and I rode the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
And crashed my brains out, broke my back, managed to get back on the bike and finish, got like an 18th or something like that. Whatever I finished, it didn't matter. But so Yamaha signs me all up. I'm healed up. I'm ready to go. I'm testing out at our brand new Deanza test track. Do you remember that one?
I used to ride out there.
Yeah. So,
after it closed.
Rode, got all ready to go. And then I get a letter from the AMA about, I think it was about middle of December. Hey, we've noticed you signed up for the 125 class and you're an expert. So therefore you must ride the 250 class. You're ineligible for the 125 class. And I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have got back on my bike at the Rose Bowl. Apparently 1/17th in one 125 Supercross, pushed me over the top. I'm like, you can't believe. So obviously phone calls back and forth, before email. And what I learned was, in 84 and 85, riding all those outdoor nationals, back then you were a pro-am, which professional amateur, or you were an expert. And so I was unaware that when I went out and got a 5th in a moto, well, if all 4 guys ahead of me were pros, an expert pro, and I was a pro-am pro, I got full advancement points. So I somehow pointed out by riding outdoor nationals, and it was just, the system has been reinvented how many times, and it's still stupid.
Well, and even past you, like Buddy Antonez and Denny, and well into the 90s, it was a mess.
Yeah, it was all.
Well, Lammy talked about pointing out twice in his first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I was potentially, victim number 1 of the casualty of that total backward system. So that's what I was like.
One race and you're out.
One race, 17th. I go, Larry Brooks won the series, I think, or won a bunch of races, and he's still in. Oh, well, what they would do, and I don't know how much truth, I was told this later, when they would go to an outdoor national, they would sign up in the amateur the day before and do 1 lap, or I don't know, some weird thing, and then that negated. They could win the moto the next day, and they got 0 advancement points because they were racing under an amateur provision. I don't know, it was some weird thing, and I'm like, oh, that would have been good to know. It would have been good to say at the riders meeting, hey, if you plan on riding Supercross, we require you to give us $35 on Saturday. So
they wouldn't flex? You were out?
I was out. So I didn't do the first couple of races because I had no. Yamaha gave me a 250. Then I eventually, but yeah, that was, and it's so funny when you look back and you look at all that stuff because all these guys that would never beat me, the Ty Davises and all these guys are winning, regional titles and the hoops and all this, and I'm like, I felt so cheated. They were getting all these kind of perks, bikes or extra money and all that, and here I'm.
I think Bobby Moore won that year, and then Surratt, didn't he win 85 or 86?
Yeah. So all those guys, you look back at just Golden States or however you would gauge, those guys would almost never beat me, and then I got just shafted, but anyway, that's all water under the bridge now, as they say.
That's crazy. Well, and it's still not a perfect system. They've improved it, but
I think now they just leave them in there indefinitely, Martin Davalos or Martine.
Now there's ways to cheat it, is all.
Yeah. Well, you just get better at cheating. Apparently they had a provision to cheat, but I just wasn't aware of it.
You're just a bad cheater. That's all it was.
Apparently.
The system's fine.
Step
up your cheating game.
No, my focus is in the wrong place.
So tell us how you got the nickname The Doctor.
So now that's a little bit of a mystery. In respect of how I thought I got it and how it actually was given to me, it was 2 completely different things. So I had in that season, 85, 86, a bunch of injuries that kind of kept me from racing a complete season and all that. So I thought it was because they sent me pants on the surgeon. and the doctor and all this. And I thought, oh, because I spent so much time at the freaking hospital or, getting knee surgeries or whatever it was. So then later, something was said in some written article, and the guy that actually sort of gave it to me, worked at O'Neill, he said, no, what it was Dr. J, basketball player, was retiring, and so I sent you Dr. D. And that was just kind of a little play on Dr. J retiring. He was a big Dr. J fan. And I'm like, well, what was the surgeon and all that? Well, because you had, certain riding style and precision, or, you were always fairly calm. I'm like, you must not have watched me in my early career. I may look good now, but I was not that good. But anyway, so yeah, it kind of came from him just. He was the guy that made all the little butt patches for people, and so that's where it came from. So the whole time I thought it was because I had so many injuries, and
it was a nod to Dr. J.
It was a nod to a basketball player.
Which makes sense because you're 5'5". So
I think
7?
I got a little above that. Okay. Well, I think I was 5'8"-ish at a time, but all those Supercross triples,
riding without nitrogen in your suspension.
Yeah, exactly.
You shrunk a little bit.
Yeah, I think it compressed me.
All right, so what happened in 86? You, Yamaha continued their support with you?
Yes, and so I got a 250, and, I only rode a couple Supercrosses because I still really didn't have, I got bikes, but I still didn't have a lot of money to go and do all the Supercrosses, so.
But you had a place you could test out at Deanza and
they let me ride and do all that, and I remember I did, because I missed all the Anaheims and stuff, because, I was testing 125s all the way up to it, and then all of a sudden, when that came, and however it was, I didn't get a bike till I think a couple days after the first race at Anaheim.
Okay.
So then it went east and all that. Well, so then I raced, what was it, Tempe, Arizona, that little Sun Devil Stadium. Yeah, so I raced that back when the big tables were semi-flatbeds that they covered in dirt and all that. Oh, what a horrible track
I was there that night. Watching as a little kid.
Yeah, so I actually was having a pretty good night. That was my first Supercross that I ever rode, really, and actually qualified in that. And I remember battling with Johnny O in the main event, and I'm like, they better sign me after this night, and we were racing around for like 7th or 8th or something like that. And you had to short some of those big jumps because it was so slippery into the corner. I mean, you talk about baked and dusty. Mm-hmm. And so I shorted this one thing on the brake, and it ripped the little lug off the frame. Oh, remember the old floating brake? Yeah. So that little, so it was a drum brake, but so it did something like that. So I dropped like 5 or 8 spots. I got like a 15th or 17th just in the last couple laps with no brake. But so that was my first. So when I told you I went 1-1 DNF, that was kind of just a precursor to the rest of my career. Really, it was always a little something there that went on, just either injury or something with a bike, but. So the Yamaha continued to support me through that year. So 87 was better, and then it was Steve Butler came along. No, not yet. That wasn't Steve Butler yet. But anyway, I had a van. I had bought a used van off of a friend, and so we went and did, I think, either all or almost every one. I was healthy too. With Dave Hammond. I don't know if you remember that name. He was a mechanic. He worked for Jim Castillo after he stopped working for me as a mechanic. Okay. He helped build a lot of those crazy carbon bikes that Rick Johnson rode and all that. So he worked at what was Innovation, CTI knee brace and all that. So Innovation Sports. But so he worked for me a couple of years. Okay. And so 87, I got bikes and all that. And then Mike Guerra kind of stepped in, and I started just my relationship, because at the middle of 86 I started doing a lot of testing. So then I started opening the doors to get more and more parts, and I can remember the first time I actually had like Brock's bike effectively at one of those Mickey Thompson races. Oh yeah,
Ultracross.
Where we had to run the backwards side of a jump and all that craziness. So I rode
I won an Ultracross at Sun Devil Stadium, 93.
Nice.
Because I sandbagged the heat race.
Oh, because he's better cheating than I was. I was going
reversed the order.
I'd win the heat race, and I'd be at the fucking tail end of a what's called a current. What's the red flag restart?
Oh, caution yellow. Competition
yellow.
So
that's where I was. I was at the back of
you were
that
coming
restart.
out of the tunnel still.
I was in the tunnel one. So
well, if you were racing the series, you wanted the points. I was only doing one of them all. why I want to start up front. Wherever I was in the heat, I just like let a couple people go.
I think I saw a little bit on TV before when I first moved here, but when you were saying you would go up the back, didn't they just have the worst flow ever? Because it wasn't just like a jump,
it was trucks and buggies going one way.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and the bikes would go the other way.
But wasn't it like you guys would land like at the base of every,
and
it was like, it just looked like it was the worst.
It was
horrible
terrible.
track ever. But I had a good bike, and I remember battling with Mike Craig that whole night, and he won, I got second, but
that was one of his specialties, wasn't it?
Yeah, he rode all those. That was my only one then. But so I rode all of those races, and then got more support. It kind of through, I was doing a little bit both sides. I would help with, John R. and I became very good friends. He was the suspension guy for all those years. Okay. And I was the only guy that was just dumb enough to hang around the Supercross track. All the factory guys would ride their X amount, and they'd be gone by lunchtime, and I'd be there till the sun went down. And John R. was like, "Oh, finally, someone will just hang around and, put up with every one of my one shim changes. How was that? Yeah. Okay, I'll take that one back. How was that? I mean, but it opened so many doors for me. So that's what kind of led me into getting a lot more support in '88. So in '88, we had good bikes. We were still driving around a van, but we had good support.
Pretty much a factory bike? I mean, were they giving you?
Pretty much. Yeah. I don't think it was quite Brock's bike or Mickey Diamond. By that time, he had come along. Yep. But it was pretty much almost their version. Yeah. They might have been off testing and eking a little bit more out of it. But we had pretty much a factory bike. And then that's when this was the infamous Ponca City, if you remember that. So Mike Guerra has a great idea. Hey, because a bunch of other teams were sending guys. Cowie had, I think, Matasevich, Kudrowski go, and Yamaha had myself go, and Larocco, and I think Larry Ward. It's a pretty stacked field because they were allowed to kind of pull some guys down and still amateurs, even though we'd all raced nationals before. Yeah. But so I go there in '88, and it was when you had stock and mod in both classes. So you basically, it was 4 individual titles, but then you were the Grand National Champion. Yeah. I don't know, whatever it was, I gelled at the track or whatever, but I smashed all those guys. I won stock and mod 125, and I got third in stock 125, but I won mod, and then I won mod 250 and won stock 250, so I thought. So I had, and if you remember, Paul Theed at Race Tech, he made this different shifter that pivoted off the swing arm pivot. So it just, because the Yamaha, the shifter was so short, you were almost having to pull it backwards to shift. Okay. One of those things. So he had this modified shifter that made it better. So I go down there, and it was just my bikes from home, and I'm like, hey, we put all this stuff back to stock, and we go down to tech, and we tech it. We go, do we need to take the shifter off? And the guy goes, oh, no, it's, there's, verbiage in there. You can modify the shifter as long as you're not changing inside the engine or whatever. He said, okay. We rode it all week. No one, and so I was mad at Guerra, even though he comes back and says, I still paid you your contingency. But so that was the last race of the weekend. I won the moto, and they pull my bike aside. And I'm like, it's an illegal shifter. And I'm like, no. I talked to the tech guy. Go get the tech guy. And, of course, he was gone. He was
went home for the weekend.
He was home for the weekend. But so it got stripped from me. The class win, I think the class win went to Matasevich, and then the Grand National went to Kudrowski, both Cowie guys, and the event was sponsored by Cowie. So it was a little weird. It was obviously back before the internet, but there's letters back and forth in the back of Cycle News, and everyone was pissed because
I was there that year.
Yeah.
80 intermediate.
80 intermediate. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, well, I was almost the Grand National champ. But, so anyways, that kind of helped me into 89. I got real proper support. Okay. I mean, I had the best bike. I had a box van. They leased you for $1, so that for liability or whatever. Yeah. And then that's when, because Butler came along, Steve Butler, who's still here today. They haven't kicked him out of the country. But
and how did he come over?
So what it was, Dave Hammond, who I'd mentioned before, so he came over with a bunch of guys. They came in a little group of 5 or 6 or whatever, and they lived up on Paris Boulevard because Mockingbird Canyon, or not Mockingbird, but Ritchie Canyon out there was the king riding spot. So they all came to ride and just whatever, Australians seem to have way more vacation days than the rest of the world. Every time I was on an airplane, I swear, for half my career, I'm always sitting next to some Aussie. Oh, yeah, I'm going to Canada. I'm going, I got 27 weeks off. What the heck?
That was Lyndon Heffernan, too, came with them.
Yeah. Heffernan was in that group.
Yep.
Ian Rowe, he was in that
Ian
group.
Rowe was it? Yeah.
And so there was...
We hung out with Ken Fott, and we hung out with those guys, and we went ice blocking and stuff like that over in Corona and all that
You
stuff.
went what?
Never...
Ice blocking.
What the hell's that?
You slide down a hill on a big block of ice.
Okay.
First, you got to crawl into the ice machine because you don't pay for it. You got to climb up into it.
You could probably left that part of the story out.
I didn't do that.
He's also good at cheating, if you don't know. Cheating the system.
You heard that people did that,
I heard people
right?
did that.
Yeah. I know there's a great ice blocking hill in Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people have died on it, but that's
Well, then that means it's fun.
Excellent hill.
Yeah,
must
let's
be
do
great,
it.
right? Must be great.
Not a party till someone dies.
But so Steve Butler was like the second wave. I think it was just only a few of them that time, but he was looking. He came over. He thought he was going to race, and then he quickly realized that he would have a little more success as a mechanic because he grew up, working in a shop and being a mechanic and raced. But so Dave Hammond got this opportunity to go work for Innovation Sports for Jim Castillo, much more lush gig, I think. But so I ended up working with Steve Butler. And so that was beginning of '89, and that's where we got a box van. We had good bikes, everything, and Steve was outstanding mechanic, even though I was such a, I don't know, what do they call those? A helicopter bomb? Yeah, I was that with my bike. Because, I knew enough about it, and I'd had a lot of kind of shady mechanics that it was just ironic that, here's probably the best mechanic that ever lived, and I'm looking over and making sure he's putting the stickers on right or tightening that bolt. But so we had great success. That was actually my best overall year was '89. I got 6th in the Supercross series.
6th outdoor.
6th outdoor and 4th in the 500 on that 360.
Yeah.
Which was not the fastest bike in the world.
Well,
but again, to your point, if we could all get to the first turn.
Okay, yeah.
And because after 15 minutes, those guys would all be dead tired, and I'd still be charging through the end. I made a lot of, late moto passes to, get.
Yeah.
some
Well, yeah,
good
to your
results.
point, like when you were talking about the 250s being just as fast as Supercross, if you could just get a start inside the top 5 or 6,
you were golden.
Yeah, you
and
could
those
stay
guys,
there.
they would rip the first handful of laps, but when the track started deteriorating and they started,
The fall off was higher.
Yeah, exactly. And then I could, because that thing, it's funny.
But wasn't that thing like just get slower and slower as the race went on too?
No, it started out slow.
Oh, okay.
Because
Couldn't get much slower.
when we first got those, we were drag racing like our current 250 race bikes, and our 250 race bike was like 3 bike lengths on the start to that 360 because it was just, we got that kit. Olin's built that kit, but it was short of a little bit technology. The cranks weren't balanced properly. Piston was heavy. There's just a lot of things that kept it from its potential.
Okay.
And finally, towards the end, it got better. I mean,
Really?
But we had it such a short time because it was just a late decision to do this. Or we're not going to ride the 490. We'll ride these things. And
why not ride the 490?
It was at that point it was dated, you you talk about falling off, that thing would start detonating. And funny story, I told this to Brock some years back. I went and rode one of those Burnworth races, and I rode like a Brock replica bike, and so I walked up to him next time I saw him in the Dunlop tent, and I kissed his feet. I said, dude, we all knew that you were a superhero to even run close to Bailey on that Works Honda, but I have a whole new level of respect for you because that bike, it's just no power valve. It would heat up, it'd start detonating. There's nothing worse than trying to break into a corner and have the thing go gung, gung, and all of a sudden it was like somebody grabbing the throttle. I mean, those things were a little bit, they
Pretty
just,
rough, huh?
it its time had passed.
It surprises me that Yamaha didn't come up with something better.
Well, and they were racing those Works bikes, those YZM 500s, but that was such a limited program, and they were having lots of trouble with that early aluminum frame, breaking a lot. It just,
Did you ever ride that?
20-something years later, I rode one in France about 5 or 6 years ago, first time, and then I've ridden one a couple times since then. Same guy loans it to me when I go and do that race, which I'm supposed to go to in May if the if we were allowed to fly by then. But so it was funny because I was at an international race in France, and Jackie Beaumont, I got to know him well through Jim Castillo and all that. And his mechanic, Michel, great guy, he's like, oh, yeah, you want to ride it? It was after the race or something. Yeah, you could go and ride it. And I'm like, yeah, I just figured I'll ride it somewhere. I'm a testing guy, I'll ride that thing. But it was such a little narrow program. That thing came and went so quick that
you didn't see it much.
No.
A couple pictures from Europe and
it was there and gone pretty quickly. So so the 360 it finally got better and better. Spent some money, balanced cranks and did just a lot of different things. And I actually, my highlight of that year was I hole shotted Unadilla on that 360 over,
Is that right?
Yeah, because it was Lachine and Wardy on the Cowies, and it was Bale, Stanton, and Johnson on the factory Hondas, so those 5 pretty serious bikes. And I hole shotted first moto at Unadilla on that thing.
Should have just pulled off.
Yeah,
turn 2, just pull it off.
I was reaching around to pat myself on the back, and I lost a couple positions, so the whole shot didn't last for very long.
So is that the same basic bike that like Bradshaw continued to race when he came around?
So this is kind of back to the 490. So in 1990, we rode 490s again. But then in 91, when Bradshaw was on the bigger bikes, he rode that WR. We tried to ride that WR, which was...
that was even worse.
It was the same bike. It had a couple little modifications, but it was still the same bike. But they decided to race it because that's right. 90 we didn't ride. In 90 we rode 125s.
Okay.
And then so 91 they're like, because they just released it as a off-road bike, a WR. And so we raced them, and it wasn't great. But Damon, much to his credit, his ability, he won a moto on that thing. He beat all those guys.
That's pretty incredible.
Freaking bike, I was. I think it was Binghamton. He won second moto or something. But that boy, when he wanted to ride, he could ride like nobody else.
Yeah. So 89 was kind of a great season for you, like you said. 4th overall in that 500 championship on that bike.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, Lachine breaking his femur at Delmont helped me a little, but I think I was already.
Well, even if you were 5th, it's still.
Yeah, and that kind of some other little weird details about that year. So my direct teammate was Mickey Diamond, and he did something that I will be etched in my brain forever. So we're up at Washougal testing this thing, right?
Okay.
And you remember Washougal? So you come down off the hill, you do the left right, and then you come down off the Chuck Sun jump. And then you turned around there. And remember, it was like a wall jump there for a long time. So it had some little rollers up to it. And I don't know what Mickey did, because I'm sitting there to where I'm in the infield, like that grassy infield, and so I could just look to my right, and it was maybe 20 yards away was that jump. Okay. And I was kind of talking to John R., and I'm looking over, and I'm watching Mickey come around, and all of a sudden, I just turned away, but out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, he did something to where he kind of got kicked and fell off the bike. He hit that wall jump, full tap, like third gear. And I mean, he was... No, and I'm not exaggerating in any way, shape, or form. He was 30 feet in the air, and he just bailed off the back of it and landed out in the grass.
Oh, he was going off the track.
Yeah, because, the track kind of curved
Bend to the right
after that, and then you kind of went left and did that triple. But it was the most frightened I think I'd ever been in my life to see something like that happen. Nothing broke, but he bruised both heels. I mean, you can see the divots in the grass where he landed, and he bruised. So he was off the bike for, I think he only came back and rode 3 of those 500 races because we were testing that 360 that day. So that was pretty gnarly. So it ended up being really Steve Lampson as a privateer, 269 on that 360. Remember, I think he was a North County Yamaha guy. Yeah. So Lammy and I kind of, battled in there on that, and we had... and Steve's a great guy. I got to know him really well kind of through that series.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Mickey never told us. He was on the show. He didn't ever mention that story.
Yeah, he probably
tried to forget it.
Forgot that one. Yeah, that was scary.
So what about being on the box van out on the road, you and Butler? Like, do you have... I have really great memories of those days for me.
Those were the best times because... you got to ride all kinds of tracks, backyard tracks, just other proper, public tracks, and you just got. Those were the times I enjoyed. Like, and please, I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit.
Okay.
But that Japanese guy that I was training there for a few years, Watanabe had your number there one year, and then they took it away from him. But that was one thing I told him. I said, we're going to stay back. We'll rent a car, we'll do whatever, but we're going to stay back, and I'm going to take you to... I posted that one picture. You said, I've ridden that track, that sand track.
Yep.
On the East Coast, but we went Martin MX. I mean, we went to all these tracks, and that guy, the grin on his face after each day we'd be done riding. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like just riding with other random people, but riding all... Because in Japan, there's a few good tracks, but for the most part, they ride kind of some crap that's what they have to ride
same
on.
Old crap too.
It's the same old crap. Yeah. So, but. So those are the memories that I have too. I mean, those were some of the best times going down to Florida, staying at that Holiday Inn and riding right out of your room out into the sand that was gnarly.
That's got ditched.
But, all that stuff is what builds all those fond memories that we all still have. And those were the best days.
That's what I enjoyed, when I went to Europe and did the GPs. Obviously, Europe's not it's not as big as America when you look at it. So to drive around Europe, but it's so different everywhere you went. And I think being a young, teenager, it was a good eye opener. I mean, it really gave you that kind of school of life and. Wow, like everywhere's different, and why is this place like this? And then you look at their history, and everything makes sense. But it was really sort of eye-opening, and it created an atmosphere and experience. But it was a good time.
Well,
I did that in the States, the same thing when I had my motorhome. A lot of times when there were back-to-back races back east, we would just go from one place to another and try and arrange to go ride someone's backyard track and a public track. And to me, I thought that was always part of the experience, man.
Stuff you can't learn in a textbook.
No,
and a lot of kids aren't getting that experience because they go straight from amateurs right into a factory rig, and it's too bad.
Or even if they are traveling, they're so glued their thumbs. Mount Rushmore, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a big rock.
Oh, let me Google it. Oh yeah, here's a picture right here.
Hold on, let me put on my story.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's one more thing here. Well, a couple more things. The following season, 90, you were teammates with Emig and Bradshaw. Are you going to get the stories from those two guys?
I don't know if we have enough to really cover that year, because it was interesting. Because Emig came in and we didn't know him that well. I mean, I just kind of knew him here or there, maybe just from whatever, but I didn't know him that well. And I'd been hanging around Damon for a few years at that point, and we were pretty much tight and buddies, and I knew how to, kind of what made him click and how to work with him, because he was pretty volatile. He was like bipolar almost, but
he's like the stock market these days.
Yeah, exactly. So he was. So Emig came in, and Emig was a little bit reserved. He kind of kept to himself, and which was just the worst thing, because all Damon wanted to do was, what he did to all of us. Walks into a hotel room, tackle him, and beat his ass. And we were all used to it, but I don't think Emig was quite so keen on it. But it was a little bit of a weird year, and for me, I had a bunch of injuries, so I missed a lot of races. So it was, I would be at the races and trying to help them in any way I could, but I missed a bunch of races that year.
Did Yamaha ask you to come and help these guys?
Somewhat. But it was weird. I never really got the traction with Emig. Like, hey, come on, we'll go mountain bike, or we'll go, whatever. I did so many weird things. I was crazy. We'd go rowing, or we were just trying to broaden that instead of just riding moto all day, every day. We were doing lots of stuff, and I never really get Emig to come. He was always. It was funny because he had this little ritual. So Saturday before the National, you couldn't find him.
He'd go ride.
Yeah, he'd go off, and him and Butler, because that's probably the other reason that I didn't get along with him. He took my mechanic, but him and Butler would go off, and you wouldn't see him all day. They'd go to Tech either right when it opened or right as it closed, but they'd go ride, and Emig would just do this little thing, which that's great. If that's what makes you click, then that's what you need to do.
Yeah, he said they would get the jetting just Nat's ass.
Yeah, Butler was, like I say, I felt bad picking on him when he was first my mechanic, because that guy's smarter than any 10 people that I ever worked with after. I mean, so this is a weird little offshoot bit of trivia, but you can use it sometime down the road. So on that, the year that Emig won the title,
which was that 92?
I think it was 92.
Yeah.
92. So
that's when LaRocca had all that issues at the end of the year, huh?
38-point lead and 2 races to go.
And 40 DNF later or something.
Yeah. But Butler had actually, the pilot jet, he couldn't get it down lean enough down low. He soldered up the pilot jet, completely blocked it, and that's when that bike really started running good.
I remember hearing that.
I think Jeff might have mentioned that.
Yeah, because
there was no pilot jet.
Yeah, he just soldered it. He didn't solder the circuit in the car, but he soldered up the jet. He just put solder in it so it didn't pass, and then just put the jet back in. But I mean, just who else would
but no
be that
fuel,
innovative?
no fuel going through it. You're saying
in that, because there was enough bleed just through the other circuits, up through the needle or whatever. There was enough bleed that he couldn't, no matter what he put in it, he couldn't get it lean enough to get that bottom. But that's how just thorough he was and how sharp he was.
I think that opened up a can of worms in South Africa because people had heard about these carb mods, and I think guys' bikes didn't run for the next 2 seasons. There were guys going everywhere.
They didn't have the rest of the package. They just thought, this one thing I'm going to do.
I do remember that because I just I got on 80s in 91, and then by like 93, it just seemed like every father was screwing around with. And I remember the kids would all be sitting there going, "Oh yeah, dads are just destroying our bikes right now." We'd be sitting there like,
"Can I ride it stock again, please?"
We're rolling tires down the hill, like because they used to use car tires in South Africa to mark the track, so we'd be rolling car tires down the hill, and dads would be like, "Bike's ready to go."
Not really.
Hold on. Like, oh god, you're wasting our time.
Well, those were definitely 2 different guys, huh?
Yeah, so I mean, that whole year was a little bit of that, trying to figure out sort of what made Jeff click or what, how we could all get along. And, in the end
Jeff
of it.
Jeff strikes me as a bit of a, perfectionist in that way. Like, when you just see him sometimes, like how he is, like you said, working on jetting on Saturday. Like I could totally see Emig being like that, but he was also a good starter, and I think that was probably part of his mental preparation.
He just isolated, and
the bike's good. I know we're dialed. We're ready to go racing.
Yeah, and that's why I say, hats off to him because he arguably, won that championship on what most people would say wasn't the best bike, but I think by the end it was very, very competitive.
I always thought that thing looked good. Was it not that great?
Originally, like if you look at a magazine shootout, I think it was the worst
Stock
performing. But so it's always hard to start with a platform well below everyone else. It's a lot easier.
If you make it really, really good, then it's as good as the other guys.
Exactly. The other guys just put a pipe on it, and it's better again. But I mean, that was just an interesting year for all of us. I mean, kind of, Damon, again, I think he had pretty up and down year that year, win a race and get hurt. And, it was.
Was that the year he won the Miami Supercross on the 125?
That was 89.
Oh, that was 89.
God,
that was incredible.
Crashed 4 times and stuff. He was jumping stuff that none of us were jumping, because, that was Damon at his, prime.
Wasn't it pretty sandy as well?
It was all sand.
It was a full-on
sand. But I mean, like sandy sand.
Yeah, it was white sand. We rolled out there
to look
at
race somewhere.
Press day, and we're going, what the? This is going to fall apart. And
we don't need to go to the beach. They brought the beach to us.
But it made for an interesting race.
It made for an exciting race.
You got to imagine. Think about it. Whether it's GP or Southwick, go look at the results over the years. It's always a bit of an upset. Someone near the front or someone that should have been there wasn't.
Because the challenge is much different than all the other tracks.
Yeah. Those were so. I'm going to jump to 92.
Whoa!
Oh, do I get a mulligan back now?
Did you race?
Ahead?
Take a shot.
Did you race the whole 250 Supercross season in 92?
Yes, I think I might have missed one here or there just from injury, but I had some good results in 92.
So I went down a rabbit hole the other night on YouTube, and I found the 92 Tampa Supercross. Do you remember that at all?
A little bit. Was that the one that Everett's rode, number 111 on a Suzuki?
They didn't show him if he did.
I think that was later. I think that was like 94 when he was here. Yeah, I think it was 94 when he came.
Okay.
It was 93 or 94.
Yeah,
I think,
somewhere.
But anyway, it was Cooper was out front, Bradshaw was up there, Chicken was up there, Stanton was up there, Bale was up there.
God, there were so many
Maybe
big
somebody
names.
else. Wardy for a minute. Anyway, it was just packed. Like, that racing was so good, and Bale sat back and forth the whole race and just was quiet. All Bradshaw and Stanton
Everyone trying to
smashing
kill each other.
And with a lap and a half to go, Bale just drops the hammer, blitzes the whoops, goes by one guy, turns, blitzes the next, that goes by the other guy, and he's gone.
That
It
guy was
was like-
incredible.
I forgot how amazing that guy was when he turned it on.
That's why everyone disliked him, because he was so good. And he was a little bit reserved also. But that guy, I can remember, so I got hurt in Japan, and it was 91. But they wanted all of us, because that was the year I'd won a Supercross, they wanted all the winners, because there's like 6 different winners that year, to go to Bercy. As part of the whole opening ceremony. So I went anyway, injured, so I sat up in the stands and watched all the nights. And watching Bale, I mean, the Bale Bradshaw, I mean, I don't think you could get 2 different people.
Sure.
And
Personalities, riding style, everything. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like Bale is literally just riding around every inside, standing on the pegs. Damon, I mean, like if you separated him and you watch Damon, like if it was just single lap times, you'd
You're
be
like,
like,
"He's
that guy's 5 seconds a lap faster than this guy. And every night Bale would just pick him off, just pick the spot almost, just pick him off and just leave him. And Damon would just furious, like, how does this guy go like that?
Random question, but because I have my feelings on Bale, but who do you think was the most naturally gifted rider to throw a leg over a bike? Because you've seen a lot of errors.
I mean, Lachine's probably one of the first guys that would come to mind. And then I think Bale would be right in there. Jason Lawrence, another guy that, I mean, when you would watch that guy ride, he would
That year
do
he won.
stuff. You
He
just
ran
go,
circles around Dungey, and you look at Dungey's career.
Yeah. I mean, he would. But, I mean, the mindset and how you approach something, how you look at something, those guys, some of those guys just figure that stuff out.
Bale always blew my mind. I mean, I remember, because that was obviously the era that I started really watching racing. I remember, was it 92? I think you got almost every hole shot at the Outdoor Nationals. Like you were hole shot at every race. I remember that.
I had a
like, God,
few,
that guy's got the hole shots down. And but Bale was one of the only people I remember, when guys were tripling into corners and stuff, they were braking, going up, sliding the berm, and Bale was able to triple to the inside, brake, pivot, and still jump the jump. And you're going, well, why isn't everyone else doing that? And you talk to everyone, they're like, we tried.
It's impossible.
Don't think we didn't try, man. Like we just could not get it down. They're like, but he was just so.
He was very good at shortening the track up and still doing all the obstacles.
Yeah.
You just like, and I mean, another little testing side note, but. So, and I'll probably get in trouble. People will hunt me down. But so at that time, like our bikes were great. I mean, our Yamaha's factory bikes were great. But the Honda, I think it was right around the 91 or something. The Honda just had amazing low end. It was through their power valve system and whatnot. And I remember fighting with Bob Oliver about this.
Oh, Bob,
I'm like, Bob, blah, 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 blah. Our bikes make 9,000 horsepower. That thing only makes like 11. And I'm like, but Bob, there's 11 really good horsepower there, and this is all part of my fight and, just everything that I went through for all those years. And it wasn't until, and it was the biggest mistake, we got Bradshaw on that bike. It was our testing bike from production testing, racing didn't buy it. And went out to the Yamaha Supercross track, baked, slippery, we'd water it, but, about 11 minutes later, it was baked and slippery again. And David could jump everything that he could never jump on his race bike from the inside.
On the Honda?
On the Honda. And I remember Bob was just flipping out. And it actually was, it ended up being a good thing because then it helped Bob focus.
Right.
Hey, the 9,000 horsepower is maybe not the ultimate direction. We can come over here and kind of shape things a little bit different. And
where it's at and how it applies is just as important, if not more.
And the dyno is only, one little piece of it. And that's what,
Well, that's also when they probably had to figure out that the dyno isn't going to produce a good Supercross engine. I mean, Supercross, you never get to the max horsepower. Everything's just straight off the bottom.
And that's
Cracking
where
the throttle.
I think my whole human dyno little sub nickname came along, because I was helpful, I hope, in a lot of those little problems that we faced where, it was, the dyno.
Yeah,
I said, just wrinkle that piece of paper up and just set it aside for now. Don't throw it away, but just set it aside and listen to what I'm saying. And that was part of my argument, or what supported my argument. Nothing only makes, like nothing. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't care what it makes. You can turn the screen off on that dyno. Just listen to what I'm trying to tell you. And then, it was helped get proved out. And I think you see it in a lot of places. I think Mitch went through a lot of that when Drino came around. And, they really started, they were puttying at ports and they were starting to do things to.
Because they were all screamers, but they were lacking bottom end.
Exactly. And that's where I think Mitch really started that run of winning almost everything was. I think he went through that transition to kind of realize that, that big peak number is really it's
fixing your ego.
Exactly.
It's not really, what you want.
It's fluff. And so, a lot of that stuff is very interesting that, I was lucky enough to live through a lot of that through all these years because, 30-something years as a test ride at Yamaha, you saw a lot and you experienced a lot through, from both sides, from the testing and the racing side.
So your Supercross win in San Jose, was that 91 or 2?
91.
It was 91. Mm-hmm. Take us through that night.
So that night, and it's so funny, everyone portrays Rick Ryan as the only privateer to ever win a Supercross, but I was technically a privateer. Everyone just assumed I was Yamaha factory because
I would have thought that too.
I had the bike, I had the box fan, I had everything, but I had gone back because 90, I had all those injuries. I only rode like half the races that year. But so what Yamaha did is it was Emig and Bradshaw. Like if you looked at a press kit, from that year, it was Emig and Bradshaw. I wasn't even included in the press kits. But
until you won your first race.
They're like, maybe we should promote this guy.
We forgot a page on that kit.
But so, I got the box van. I had the same bike Bradshaw had. Everything was the same, but I had no salary. I got a chunk of money to pay Randy Lawrence, who was my mechanic then, and I still got my flights and hotels done, organized through them, but it came out of my stipend that I got at the beginning of the year. So I was
And Randy was working on your bikes at Yamaha, right? So
so he went down there, and I was paying him through my money, but he would go down there. It was kind of a Keith requirement, which made sense. You got to be here, learn how to do this job and do it properly. So
interesting. I didn't know that.
So. That year, again, up and down, like I had at the end of 1990, because I was hurt most of the year, so I was just eager to go race, I won a slew of all those Europe races. Like I won both nights in Geneva, beating Bale and Lachine, a bunch of guys, Brock, there was a bunch of fast guys.
Did you go to like Osaka as well? Japan?
Yeah, I think I did. I never won in Japan, but I did do all. We were always kind of had the
obligatory. It was always Osaka, but it was a couple.
It was 2 races in our contract every year, and one was always on Thanksgiving. So we all kind of, especially Keith, he was like furious about that, but it was always in our contract.
Damn it!
But so. I was kind of on this roll at the end of 1990 because I was determined to kind of get my ride back, so to speak. And just won, like Larry Ward was the guy that won in Europe. Well, that year I won everything in Europe. So I come home, a little bit this and that, I think the first race, I think I did pretty good, maybe 5th or something at Anaheim. And maybe had a little problem at the next race. Well, San Diego, I think it was like race 3. Crashed, 2nd or 3rd lap main event, tore my knee up. I'm just like, because I was doing some stupid wheel tap thing that only a couple guys were doing, and apparently I was not qualified to be doing it. But tore my knee up, sat at home forever, at the, a little scope and we'll be okay. So Randy actually went out on the road, followed my box van, went out there with those guys. Eventually came back. I'm like, it's just, it had a big clunk in it, and they did another thing, and blah, blah. So I came back in Oklahoma City. So I was like race 10 or 11. I think our series was 14 rounds back then or something. So it must have been race, because I did Oklahoma, San Jose, and then LA was the last one. So
that's a gnarly track to come back at too. That was daytime, and they always made it.
That was the next year they did the daytime.
Oh, okay.
It was at night. It was one of the first outdoor night ones.
Okay.
If you remember that one, it was Wardy's last Supercross win. And that was the
go back
beginning of I was the beneficiary of the Chicken Cooper at San Jose. Well, it began the week before in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Cooper's backyard. And I think he passed Chicken clean, and then Chicken came in the next corner and just took them both down. So that was my first race back, I think, of 10th or 11th, whatever, just out of racing shape. Go to San Jose and have a great practice. Everything's good. And I remember, it's a funny thing, Keith McCarty, he comes into my box van, and he says to me, he goes, if you can go through that whoop section that fast all night, you're going to make a lot of money. And of course, money resonated with me. I'm like, okay, note to self, go through that. Because there was really only one whoop section that day leading right up to the finish.
Were you skimming them, or was it like
they were big, and I was one of the only guys skimming them successfully.
Okay.
And so whatever. And I remember, I don't even think I qualified out of my heat. I think I tangled with someone or something, so I had to go to the semi. And I remember Larry Brooks and I went at it in the semi, and I won it. But anyway, little things that went throughout the day. Yeah. And Okuhara, Holly's Japanese guy, about killed himself right in front of me. And I remember that was something that pops into my memory of that day. But so come main event time, I'm just ready, like any other day. And I think I had the track pretty dialed, It was just, I think I was just looking to put my best performance out there, and without going way deep into the psychology of racing. I mean, we've all done it. You crash in the first turn, you're a whole different guy than when you get the whole shot. So I think that was my mentality. I'm like, I'm kind of behind the ball here. I need to do something good tonight. And Keith told me I'll make a lot of money. But so I didn't even get the whole shot, which is funny because, I was such the whole shot guy. I think I was 5th or 6th. And I remember passing Stanton like right away. And I'm like, okay, that's a good sign. And so I got around Jeff, and then it was a couple other, I think it was Matasevich, and then like Larry Ward, Jeff Ward, and Guy Cooper. Something there's, so that's probably about 5th. So I'm like, I just got to put laps together. Well, so I was kind of chasing Cooper, and he was always sort of my nemesis, kind of from our rookie year, and I'm just trying to, and he got around Jeff Ward, and then I'm like, Wardy won last week. I'm feeling pretty good. I got around Jeff and got around Larry, so I got myself into 3rd. And Cooper was just inching away from me a little bit. I think Stanton was putting some pressure on. I was having to do some protective lines. I'm like, oh, man, I want to stay with Coop. So then I kind of broke free from Jeff again, just settled down, and I can just remember lap after lap, I'm like, because I'd gotten a podium in '88, my first real Supercross year, LA Coliseum. I got a podium that night, but I'm like, it'd be great to podium. So I kept focusing on the back of Cooper's jersey. And every lap over the big triple, then there was a double into a bowl turn. So when I was in the air in the triple, I could see Cooper in the bowl turn. Well, then I could start seeing Chicken. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we were kind of both catching Chicken. I'm like, all right. And it was funny because the thought crossed my mind. I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to pick up one more spot. I'm like, yeah, a second would be great. And the silly things you think about when you're racing, on the edge of risking your life. But I'm like, oh, this could really, play into my favor. So going round and round. And so I come over, I get the white flag, and it was like a tunnel. So the finish line jump was the over part. Yep. And so the guy's got the white flag, and I see him throw the yellow up real quick. And so I come over, and I didn't really notice that there was 2 bikes down. I just saw someone down, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it finally happened. So I'm like, come through this next little section. Well, soon after was that triple into the other thing. So I hit that triple expecting to see, because for the last 3 laps, I could see them both in there. There was nobody in that bowl turn. And you talk about crap in your pants. I'm like,
was anybody close to you behind?
Well, so here's the thing. I could tell Stanton's engine, you just knew who Stanton was versus Bradshaw. So I'm like, I'm still feeling pretty good. Well, so I go over that triple, and I go into the corner, and I could hear a Damon engine. I'm like, holy shit, that's Damon. That's not Stanton, So now I'm in a little bit of a panic because I've only got 4 straightaways to go to the finish. So sure enough, and if you watch the tape, Damon just like over jumps this obstacle and just stuffs Stanton. They both almost missed the under for the tunnel because he just took Stanton so wide. So then the next little section, it's clearly Damon. So then I'm like puckered up solid because I'm just like, oh no, this guy. And
You know he won't hesitate.
yeah, he won't hesitate.
Even your buddy,
he
he'll run
loves
you.
me, but he just so when we go into the whoop section, well, I overcommitted in. It was a double and then the whoops, and so I overjumped the double. I came in and kind of tap, did a little something goofy, and I could just hear this next to me, and I'm like, no, because that was the finish line right there. And I mean, I beat him by a bike length.
Oh, I didn't know it was that close. I'll have to watch it again.
And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I was just in shock. I'm like, okay, that was a checkered, right? I am supposed to stop. And it was just one of those really, really obviously cool nights, everything.
Yeah.
You know, Damon was so happy for me. I remember we went to like this Denny's or Coco's or something, 2 a.m. after all the celebrations. And he freaking calls Marcia, his mom, and he's like screaming in the phone. It's 4:35 in the morning in Charlotte. And so, just that whole night was really cool. Emig won the 125 class. Because if you remember,
did he?
so like there's 3 of us, and we went 1, 2, and 1. So that was a pretty good sweep for the Army boys that night.
Isn't that one of the first times you drank alcohol? Or
Well, no, there's a funny story that because as much as I'd like you to believe that was my first time, no, I drank Paul Theed. That's where you might have heard the story and maybe twisted. But so Paul Theed told me, he was Mr. Nothing, and he goes, if you win a Supercross, I'll drink a beer. So that was May 15th was San Jose. So Mammoth's coming up, right? So Paul, we always went to Mammoth. So Paul's up there. And so we got, all your buddies. And we're in Whiskey Creek. We're just hanging out and that. Oh, Paul, it's about, you got to, pay your dues. So, of course, I didn't even know this at the time. So my buddy goes and buys him a beer. Takes a little drink off it and then puts a shot in it. And we're like, well, Paul will never know.
Yeah,
he's never had a beer before. So he drank that whole beer and he felt so ill because I think it was whiskey or something they threw on top
That's
of
a great combo.
Kind of capped it off. But so that was it was a great night.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, just everything. My mom didn't go to very many races. She drove down and she was there.
Oh, cool.
So it was a lot of cool things.
And came at a good time with your Yamaha.
So then that helped secure me, because then I had 92 and 93. I had a 2-year deal after that. And it was at the right time for me. And I remember that being, and I'm sure you guys have had these same races, that seemingly was an easy race, just being in the right frame of mind. Like, I wasn't even worried about Stanton so much. And I mean, here this guy was the Supercross champ the year before, and I'm like, well, okay, I got this. The next week was the last race at L.A., and so, of course, I'm like, well, I have to do something great. I rode the absolute wheels off. Perfect 20 laps, and I got 5th.
Yeah.
Just like, that was like a better race, I felt, or at least I took more risks and nearly crashed more times. But, it's just all that stuff, how things just, but obviously I was in the right place at the right time. Just, Damon got stuck in the gate that night, so he came from last to get second, on a track. I think it was Larocco or somebody in a post-race. You can't pass out there, and then somebody put that together where, Damon passed 19 guys or whatever. So,
well, it's cool that you got your name in the record book.
Yeah, I mean
those don't come easy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? As cool as your whole career was, that's just neat to have one of those on your resume.
Funny thing, because Paul and I were pretty tight, Paul Theed, and since I wasn't a Yamaha guy, they never ran a win ad. So Paul Theed actually ran a win ad, and he put that in there, like percentage of people that race and at this level or entries and all that. It was like 0.00 something that ever won a Supercross. So that was a cool little ad that he put together for me.
Okay, let's take a quick break. This is your Torley Designs Timeout. We're going to be right back with more Doug Dubach. Stay tuned.
At Nihilo Concepts, we have a passion for innovation and for motocross. Our mission is to develop parts that will improve the durability, functionality, and the appearance of your motorcycle. We're proud to say that everything from Nihilo is made in the USA in our state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Stuart, Florida. Whether you race every weekend or you just ride for fun, Nihilo offers high-quality, innovative parts that you just won't find anywhere else. Nihilo offers custom engraved engine covers, one-piece titanium foot pegs, brake tips, internal engine components, specialty tools, frame grip tape, carbon fiber components, and so much more. Check out our website, nihiloconcepts.com, and see for yourself why teams like Red Bull KTM, Rockstar Husqvarna, Troy Lee Designs, and some of the fastest riders in the world choose Nihilo Concepts. nihiloconcepts.com.
See the sunrise, I wake up in the morning feeling so nice. I burn a couple bowls of the alright. I look out to the world and it's all mine, yeah, it's all mine. I see palm trees and joints, kids smoke palm trees like ointment. My weed breath is fresh cause I keep my appointments. Now I can finally see, like I smoke some DMT. What you think we should sound like, what you think we do at night. Cause we the best of this shit, we made a mess of this shit. We wreck the rest of all the wester with the recklessness. If you's a bitch, you might get snatched up like some necklaces. This where the rest of us live. You say we feel like the West Coast. I say we sound like the best You say we feel like the West Coast.
All right, welcome back. That's the Troy Lee Designs timeout. Get over there and check out the new GP helmet. Available in youth sizes, adult sizes, basically all of the safety features in the SE4, just in a much more affordable package. Really cool stuff. Check those guys out over there. Doug, do you remember the first time we really met?
Was it as memorable for you as it was for him? That's the real question.
I'm going to tell a story right now.
Well, here, let me just take a shot in the dark. Paris Raceway?
Nope. Well, okay. Maybe, but that's not my first memory.
Okay, that was kind of my first memory of you. But all right, let's hear it.
So, Randy Lawrence had worked for you in 93?
So he worked for me 91, 92, 93.
Okay. So, in 94, you must have done something different.
Well, I was off the race team.
Okay.
And at that point, my basic job or duties as a test rider just went through the roof because they were always having to share me.
Okay.
Kind of across the two departments, testing and racing. And so I still raced a fair amount, but just pick and choose because I was full time. I was testing like nonstop.
So Randy needed a job. He got kind of let go, and he was friends with Jimmy Button. Button put us together because I needed a mechanic, and so I came out and lived with Randy, and he was working for me. And we went mountain biking with you.
Okay, I think I remember the
San
story.
Juan Trail. So
can we skip forward on this?
So I, obviously I'd heard of Doug Dubach and watched his race and stuff, but I'd never met him. I'm like, oh, hey, cool, he's going to go with us. So we did, the San Juan Trail, the Ortega Highway on the west side of it. Yeah. There's a trail that goes from a fire station up to Cocktail Rock. A lot of people still ride it. So we take off, and Doug's just gone. He disappears. He's like, disappears from us, And I'm like, God, I thought Doug was going to ride with us, So we come around this bend, 20 minutes up, and he's squatting in the middle of the trail. I'm like, oh, he's waiting for us. Cool. And by the time we get to that point, he's like jumping on his bike and taking off, and he's giggling and laughing. I'm like, huh. I don't know, is he laughing at us? Like, what's happening, And we get to where he was, and there's just a huge poop in the middle of the trail.
I think was Brian Lopes with us on that ride, or one of those guys? I think I was always.
Oh, it sounds like something Lopes would do.
Well, I think I was always in competition with him, and so I thought, let me just bury him on the trail and then leave him a little gift.
I thought, all right, this guy's all right. He's got my sense of humor.
We're going to get along just fine.
All right, so what I want to pick your brain. You mentioned a little bit, kind of just over the years, working on your own stuff and all the testing you had to kind of do. But what gives you that feel for the little changes? How'd you get so good at that?
Yeah, I think I came into it with some amount of experience and knowledge, and then just working within those kind of that framework of a lot of smart people around you, just a lot of physical time on the bike, a lot of changes, and then understanding just through that whole process, your knowledge grows.
Yeah.
But I think what gave me kind of a leg up from the very, very beginning is I was very mechanical. I grew up. My dad was a drag racer. We always had cars, engines, welders. I mean, I could weld at a very young age, and I think I had a little bit of a heightened knowledge of mechanics, kind of what they did, and so that helped me a lot as things started to get to where my experience or my beliefs were backed up with some sound information that came back through, because especially under the Scheidler era, he was pretty gnarly and pretty strict, and he wouldn't tell you anything. Just go ride that, and just go ride that, and here's an evaluation sheet, and he wouldn't let on to anything. So you were pretty much just
in the dark.
Just blind. But to me, that was a great experience, because he taught me so much, the whys and the hows and all that, it really, just expanded my abilities and my horizons, which opened so many other doors. I was a Dunlop test rider for probably 15 or more years, and I did so much. I was helping Mitch with all his pipes and that, and Bones with suspension. Another thing I wanted to come down when Mitch was here just to heckle was some of those funny stories, but that would go off way down a whole different road.
We're going to have Mitch on for his own show, because that was mostly focused on stories with he and Troy. So when we have his show, we'll have to get you over.
Oh, let me know, because I'll sit right there in the front and I'll just heckle him the whole time. But I think I kind of came into it with some experience and knowledge, and then I was always a hard worker. I was never afraid of a long day. So I think that, again, opened some doors and gave me opportunities that maybe another guy wouldn't have had. So,
well, and you mentioned that earlier. We weren't afraid to stay till sundown trying little parts, and I think a lot of guys get, and myself included, I would get frustrated. Like, okay, I feel like we've made as much progress as we're going to make. Like, I want to see big improvements, and if I don't, or big. Or go backwards.
Yeah, backwards.
So we can keep a direction. But like when it's just little minuscule changes, you're like, I think maybe, I don't know. And I hate that.
Yeah.
Like that drives me nuts.
That's tough. Those are tough days for sure.
You're trying to go on lap times, but the track's changing. You don't know if the traction's good now. It was worse earlier. Is that the reason?
That was always the thing I hated.
I think we pretty much.
Was it the bike or is it the track changing? You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, we pretty much put the kibosh on all the lap times, because the Japanese would. You're in the final meeting after 2 weeks of hell, and then they'll, but you were on this one track on this one, and you're like, dude. We had a long lunch. The track was way overwatered. One that I'm saying is good might not have represented with lap time. It was a fight, and we finally kind of just took all that stuff away. We have a lot more data acquisition, so we can now understand a straightaway speed, or, with very sophisticated stuff with strain gauges and things. We're looking at frame flex, and there's just a lot that we can benefit through a bench test sort of a mentality, but it's still, it all boils down to the rider's feeling, and I think that's why it's very important to get good guys on your side, where they're not just goofy, he was once a pro, he must know, because that's far from reality.
A lot of them actually terrible test riders.
Well, it's an acquired skill or a learned skill, just like anything else.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was actually really impressed. There's a young kid who's a Team Green guy coming up, and his agent called and said, would you and Grant be willing to go out with them and kind of help him, kind of teach him a little bit about how to test? Maybe go out with Bones and you guys could work on suspension stuff. And I was like, I've never been asked that, but that's actually really sharp, and that's something guys should be doing. Because being able to say, hey, it's doing this, and then learn why. Why is it having that condition? What is the way to fix it so that if it happens in a
even
race,
if you don't know how to fix it, if you've got Bones or someone with suspension,
but you've got to be able to communicate
explain what it's doing or what you want it to do or what you don't like.
Yeah.
They're smart enough should be smart enough to go, well, if it's doing that there, then I think if we change that shim, blah, blah, blah.
But introducing somebody into that system and getting them just to go through those paces and hear what the others, people with all that experience have to say, I think that's valuable.
Yeah, very valuable.
Missing in a lot of these young riders.
Yeah. I mean, you hear it from team managers over and over. It takes guys 2, 3, 4 years before they're able to give really good feedback, typically.
To really dissect it.
Have you ever dealt with engineers who wouldn't listen? Yes. You don't need to blow anybody out, but
no, I won't blow anyone out.
I know from Suzuki days, and I did some endurance testing with Kawasaki and some stuff with Suzuki, and Chris Wheeler and Rich Taylor and those guys over there. We've shared stories about how even a pre-production bike you can have, and you're like, this is great. Oh man, this is going to be so good next year. People are going to love it. And then it goes back to Japan and gets put into production, and it comes back, and it's
like, that's not the bike.
Yeah,
what happened?
What happened to that? Yeah. No, it's true. And I think there's so many things that the average person doesn't understand about how that process happens. And it is. There's so many people under so much pressure, from a timeline to a cost to a durability, or the legal team gets in there, and there's just so many things. That's a lot of hurdles and a lot of things to line up perfectly to get that end result just how you want it. And or like you say, things go back and they come back again, and you're like, well, what happened? And it's funny, we got an old kind of a thing that we've rehashed a million times, but we had, I think it was a brake or something on a bike many years ago, and it went away, and we were trying to improve the brakes, right? And it came back, and we're like, it just doesn't seem as good as it was the last time. And then through some of these experiences, we learn to hang on to the old stuff. No, you can't have that back. Make another one at home, but we're going to keep this so we have a baseline when you come back. So, but it was a break. And however the conversation went, a lot of language barriers mixed in there. But the guy, same was all we could get out of this Japanese engineer. Oh, same. So it was Butler. Somebody was like, okay, good, not so good. same. We're like, no, not so good. Good, not so good. And we all kind of had a laugh at the end of the day. But yeah, they had changed something. It was who knows what.
Yeah.
A pad material, a cost, a vendor change. I mean, there's just so many little things that you would think, that shouldn't matter, but it does, you know, and then at the end of the day.
Well, and you mentioned, too, those Yamaha, Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, they're such big companies. Like you said, you've got legal team, you've got cost, you've got endurance, which ties in with legal. You've got all of these different things.
Well, now you got
where with KTM, those guys were so small for the longest time. They didn't have to really worry about that. And they were able to just make these massive improvements. Yeah. And I think they're getting to a point where it's big enough that it's getting a little more cumbersome for them.
Yeah, and it just happens, you know. No, you can't pick on anyone.
No.
It's
just a reality.
Exactly. They enjoyed some of those perks for a long time, and I think, the other side of it they're experiencing now as well, the legal side and all that sort of stuff. And it is, everyone's trying to do their best job. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny story about homologation. We were always so frustrated that we couldn't get our bikes, where KTM was able to get them through. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you don't know, because I don't know the backstory back there, but you're from an end user or...
Kurt lied. He told us they straight up lied. They didn't have as many bikes as they told him they did.
I remember that.
Absolutely. Because, and the things that we would run some of their bikes through our homologation standards, because this is what was taught to us by the people that put these requirements forward, like, I think it doesn't even come anywhere close to passing. How is it that, but... It's almost, it comes back into the whole political thing where, one hand washes the other, and then all of a sudden things happen, and you go, well, how did that happen? But so, there's so many restrictions and so many little, loopholes and things within the whole system that it is. I remember, I think it was...
It's been a lot of gray area in our sport for many years.
But I can remember, I think it was Lamson, maybe Kehoe, those guys, when that first aluminum Honda, they said, they left Japan and that thing was great. And then it shows up here and it was almost unrideable. Mm-hmm. And another one of those things. We had to change that, durability, a weld length, or even a temperature, something that just threw the whole thing sideways. But it happens. All of a sudden you get this happens, and then that chain reacts over here. By the time you got it fixed, it's, same. But it's not
Good, not so good.
not so good.
There's something that drives me bananas. I know it's just a legal thing. The way they're vulcanizing the grips onto the throttle tubes now. I just throw the throttle tube away, order a new throttle tube. It's crazy. Or the backfire screen on the filter cages, same thing. They're melding it into the plastic.
Yep.
Used to be able to just
that anymore. Yeah. Well, a funny story. I was trying to take Suzuki was the first ones to vulcanize the thing, and I remember trying to cut one of those things off, and I laid my finger open. And I had to go and get stitches and all that. And I was like, dang it! And so after that, I just throw the thing away. But it is, you get legal involved, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I remember I got depositioned for a situation. I won't even go into it because it was long and ugly, and it's gone now. But it's just like I go in and I sit down, and they start asking me these questions. Luckily, I must have answered enough that I didn't have to actually go and sit in court. But you're just going, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is the line. This is how you're approaching this situation.
Yeah, like how the hell did we get here?
Yeah, how did we get here? Well,
Yeah.
These guys are all riding some dirt bikes, and something happened, and now you're tying it back to the moon. And it's just like these guys have, but they're paid a lot of money to win a case, and then that's what I was. I was. It was all Yamaha lawyers, but they were asking me as if they were the prosecuting side, and I'm just like.
So you were
this isn't even in reality.
Almost like an expert witness type thing.
Exactly. And so, but however, I didn't actually have to go into court, but I was maybe helpful, maybe not. I don't know. But I mean, just the way they were presenting everything and the line of questions, I'm just like, man, I'm glad I'm not in that profession.
I wish that there was a law that the judges or courts could use that just says this is frivolous, like a common sense law. You went riding.
Now you're asking for a lot.
You signed a waiver that said this is dangerous. You crashed and you hurt yourself, and now you're suing the track and the manufacturer of the bike and the dealer
because he assembled it wrong.
I mean, come on, right? It's insane. But you can't.
Or the person that sues because they burnt their lip on a hot cup of coffee because it didn't say the coffee was hot.
And that's. I think we talked about this off air, but it's like the litigation in our country. It's cancerous. Yeah. It's so bad.
That's a good way to put it.
I got a deposition to go and as my company DrD, and it was like 9 times removed, but they still
came back to you.
And I had to pay to get out of it. I got to hire a lawyer. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to present this whole thing. It's like I am so not even connected to this, but you can't just say I'm not connected. You have to legally go through the process to prove that you're not connected. But it's the same thing. I mean, it was on down. This was a situation, and I mean, if you looked at a family tree, I'm like way over here as my company, but somehow I was attached to this situation, and you're going,
they try to bring anyone in with them and just
anyone
hope
and
that
everyone
settle.
I had not even a product on this vehicle that was involved in this incident. Not one part, but I think I might have passed by that vehicle one time when we were at Glen Helen. I mean, it was almost that removed that it was like, I think you were there that day. Therefore, you have a company?
We're suing you.
Yeah, exactly. You have a company and you have some assets. Okay, you're
I shot the
included.
clerk.
The first thing they do is
I shot the clerk. It's the Jerky Boys.
Have you seen that? You remember that from?
No, that's perfect.
I shot the clerk.
Yeah, I shot the clerk.
I shot the clerk.
Yeah. My cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great movie.
I think one of the first things they do is they go and look and go, oh, well, he's insured up to $2 million, so we're going to go for $2 million.
Yeah.
That way, he gets something, I get something, we're good.
Yep.
They'll settle somewhere in
Crazy.
between.
Well, you figure even if a manufacturer has to settle for a couple $100,000, which would be pretty common, how many bikes do they got to sell just to make that up, and then to pay the lawyer? I mean,
Well,
it's
think
like,
about for Yamaha with the whole Rhino thing. I mean, remember that? I mean, they were just up to their eyeballs in lawsuits and.
Yeah, I mean, it killed that whole line. They had to re-release it under a different name. It was that bad.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching TV, and it was almost like the asbestos commercial, but it was the Rhino guy, 1-800 Rhino, and I'm like,
Were you on a UTV and it rolled over?
Yeah. Do you know anyone that owns a UTV? You're entitled to some money.
Can you spell UTV?
Yeah.
No, we were laughing. We're like, can you imagine in 2030, so 10 years from now, TV commercials? Were you overly exposed to Lysol disinfectant during the 2020 coronavirus?
Yeah, exactly.
You may be
Lysol,
eligible for compensation.
That's what it'll be. Yeah, hand sanitizer. It's killing everyone.
What are some of the best and worst bikes you ever raced or tested?
That's
Did you own an 81 Yamaha?
Sounds like the 77 Yamaha.
Yeah, 77. I never owned one. I only
That
rode
81 with the first year, the 125 water cooled, the duck nose looking.
Yeah, that thing wasn't bad. My problem that I had with it was I was the unfortunate recipient of porous cases. So these cases, you would pressure test that engine, cold, held, no problem. But as soon as it got hot, the cases would leak, and then it would get lean, and it would seize. And I struggled with that thing. We figured it out through a friend. Oh, have you ever pressure tested it hot? And then we ended up kind of epoxying back there and fixing it. But yeah, there were some things. But it's so funny. There's so many, and I get questions similar to this all the time. Just people at the track or whatever. Oh yeah, I had this bike or that bike or whatever, and people love to pick on certain bikes, but it's a little bit like what I was saying with that Honda that went away and it came back. Well, it might have been only one little thing that, but then everyone wants to jump on that bandwagon and turn it into the worst thing that was ever sold. And then, you get these situations. But so for me, I never really had a bad experience with anything testing. There were certain items, engine design or a new suspension component or things like that, or some new chassis. Like aluminum chassis were very difficult in the beginning. I think I want to say everyone gets a little bit lucky, because my point to that would be, so Honda for many years had like the best, everyone talks about 08 Honda 450 as being one of the best chassis. So we were always convinced they know something. They know something, but what I think it was is just through a lot of hours and a lot of testing, they kind of got there, because then they released the 09, and it was pretty bad.
It was really
So you're
bad.
like, oh, thank God, they don't know something that we don't. They were just through pure hard work and a little bit of luck along the way. So, we've all experienced that. We get these, it's an all-new chassis with all the knowledge we've had, and here we go. We're going to take a giant step forward, and then we're like, that thing's horrible. What have you done? And then you go back and, you spin circles, and you spend a lot of time and money, and, your butt's bleeding, and your hands are raw, and you're like, okay, we got it to almost as good as last year's bike, So I mean, so many of those situations, just from motor to chassis to a new fork to whatever it is. So I have experienced a lot of that stuff, and it proves to me that as much engineering behind it, without all the massage that happens post engineering,
It's like a dyno chart, right? Like
it kind of.
It'll tell you one thing, but you've got to get track feedback and adjust according to that. It's the same thing with any of those new chassis. Well, according to the math, this should be great.
Yeah. Exactly.
And like Honda, when they came out with the 97, it was terrible. And it took them until 08 to have it really titties.
One of the best. Yeah, it was one of the worst, and it finally became one of the best, but it took them almost a decade to get there.
Yeah.
Because, I could go off into a million different tangents.
They were already 4 years down the road with the changes, or 3 years down the road.
And a lot of that. By the time this thing hits the market and you get the market's feedback, you're already way, way down the road on the next thing. So that's why sometimes it takes two renditions or revelation, whatever, whole design groups to fix that problem that just now came out. Because, your test riders, they get beat down. There's just a lot of situations that everyone, is it acceptable? That was always my favorite term. Is it acceptable?
Yeah, exactly.
You going to buy me a nice steak? Is there cold beer involved? Then I'll say it's acceptable. So then you get to those situations, and then it might be, but then all of a sudden public perception. And then, you get a bunch of magazines picking on something, and then before you know it, it might be that much of a problem that they turn into this much of a problem.
And I've seen that.
So, yeah, I mean, those are some of the big challenges that you just face.
I call that the wallpaper theory, where if you're off just a little bit at the corner there, by the time you get to here, it's like...
yeah, you notice it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Well, we had something that we had, I remember, at Pro Circuit from 2005 to 2006 on the 250F. It went from a steel frame to the aluminum frame. And we were just struggling because it was, like you talked about, the aluminum frame just had different characteristics, different feel. And was struggling to get comfortable. And I'll have to check, but I think Bones was the one that said, let's try this. And what it came down to is the 450 team was struggling, the factory team, and we were kind of struggling. And I'm pretty sure it was Bones, and he realized that there was a little difference in the swing arms. And somehow we got a 450 swing arm, and that made a huge difference. And then the 450 team riders tried a 250 swing arm and loved it, and we ended up
Is that right?
They ended up doing a big mass switcheroo between the factory and the person just switching swing arms.
But
so a 250 swing arm, the guys, I think it was Stewart and might have been Burner as well, I forget, or was it Burner? Anyway, they liked the 250 swing arm, and we liked the 450 swing arm, and that's what we pretty much ran.
Well, because what happens, especially in chassis, it's a harmonious, it's like an instrument. If you, and that's why all these people are all into these motor, thicker, thinner.
Yeah.
But it truly, some of it doesn't make any difference. But if you're on the cusp of something flexing too much or being too stiff, you can make some little adjustment, and now all of a sudden that thing, it sounds perfect. Where before it's like,
how's it go? There we go.
That's what you want to hear.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have any idea how many motorcycles you've ridden?
I remember, I think it was Mike Healy out at Paris. This was some years back, maybe 10 years ago. He stopped me one day. I was just out there, my stupid, I probably did 1,000 laps that day alone. But he goes, have you ever added up how many laps you've done in your life?
Dude, I was thinking about that last night. I was thinking Dubach has to be the guy who's done more laps on a motocross track than I think anybody in the history.
It's possible.
I was trying to think, who's ridden a shitload, like their whole life? And I'm like, Doug.
Yeah, I can remember that. Again, I'm going backwards now, so hopefully I'm not jumping ahead.
No, he's okay with that.
Okay, that's all right. So it's funny, Dustin Nelson and I were doing a lot of Yamaha testing, and we had some durability testing on top of our normal production stuff, but we all wanted to go run a national. So we had the Glen Helen National and the Hangtown National. We rode, I think it was 23 days in a row. We counted. So 23 days in a row, and some of those were durability days, so those were hours and hours. So it would be interesting to go back and try and do the math on just that 23-day period.
Jeez.
Doing two nationals. I did Hangtown, or Glen Helen and Hangtown in there, and I was up Monday morning riding again. And I was riding Friday till I got on the plane. Then I rode some press or something on Saturday and raced Sunday. But those kinds of chunks, you just going through the motions. Oh, okay, this person needs me to do that, but I want to go do that. And all of a sudden and that was Dustin and I sat down because we both kind of cooked. It was funny because he goes, because we all had to answer to Scheidler. And I had done something. Oh, no, it was Dustin. He, off track, blew up a hay bale, put his nuts up in his throat, the whole thing. But he's going, I got to stay out here, because Scheidler will ream my ass. Well, I had done something also. I think I had folded a brake pedal around. I'd done something as well. And he goes, I saw you in the infield. So then that was like I could stop. But because Scheidler was always a hard ass. He'd, come on, what are you guys doing? And, you better do this and that. But, yeah, I don't know. I bet there wouldn't be very many people that had done more laps around a motocross track than I have, because I've never had that. Oh yeah, I stopped for this many years or that many years. Between Yamaha, my own company, and just Dunlop tire. I mean, you name it. I was riding 5+ days a week for many, 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 many years.
Yeah, and still racing on the weekends.
Yeah, and I was. And that's Butler used to just go. I would send him, even today. I send him a text. He knows I work 12-hour days and 7 days a week, because that's my personality. And I'll send him a picture from up in the desert riding with my kid, and he's like, are you freaking crazy? You worked all week, especially when, he knew I would test all week with him. And then I sent him a picture of me up at some desert track with my kid riding on the weekend. He's like, what the hell's the matter with you?
That's crazy.
That is still impressive because I don't think I could just do that many laps. I think eventually I'd just be like, all right, I don't want to see a dirt bike on a track ever again.
Yeah, ever again.
So if you had to pick a favorite race bike, what would it be?
Favorite race bike? I would say our bikes from, and I'll kind of go 2-stroke era, 4-stroke era, but our bikes in like 91, 92, that era of our YZ250s, those bikes were just unbelievable.
Yeah.
They were, I mean, obviously I was very involved with it, so I was very happy with it. And I think the other riders, Damon liked his bike, I think Emig liked his, but those were some of our best bikes.
I think it was either 92 or no, it was 93, I think, when Yamaha came out with their new YZ80. And I remember I rode the old YZ 80, the 91 where the forks were about that thick, about an inch thick. I mean, they would flex going down the start straight.
Yeah.
And I remember I ended up getting a deal with Honda, and as I switched, everyone got their new Yamahas. I just remember they were just next level. And I was so pissed. I'm like, I rode that piece of shit. And now the minute I leave, they come out
all
with
my
this.
competitors got
and I
the good
remember
one.
every privateer was on a Yamaha.
That
yeah,
year.
and I think it was 93.
Yeah, 93 was good.
The production.
Yeah, the production stuff was very good. Obviously when the 4-strokes came along, I actually liked the 426. So 2000, 2001, those bikes, it was almost same in 2002, but those bikes were really, really good.
Good for the time, huh?
Yeah, it was unreal because the 98 and 99 400s, a little heavy, a little slow, just by what you want.
Yeah.
And just that 426 motor was enough better, a little bit lighter, but those were really good bikes. Like I went to Canada and raced their Canadian Championship in 2000. And I remember Dave Gallen he was just blown away. He's like, well, don't you need this? Don't you want that? Don't you? And we rode pretty much a standard bike. And, I won the championship on that thing. And he's even like a tire. And he's like, well, don't you? I remember going to Calgary. I think it was like round 3. My tire was a bit rounded, and he's like, oh, we got to put a new tire on. I'm like, no, it's a cement gate. I want that little bit of a roundness, a little more surface area. And he's like, he couldn't understand that. And then, when I whole shot at both motos, he's like, okay, I think.
Yeah.
That used to make my stomach stick. Like when you put a new tire on.
Oh, I know.
And before the parade lap, I'd just smoke it, try to wear that edge off, do the parade lap, come back, burn it again. I mean, you're ruining it before you even take off. That was frustrating.
But so I think those bikes were good. And one of the things that was a really big point to me, and I think Grant can attest to this because I think he was a beneficiary of winning an AMA outdoor title, was when you got to ride I believe it was the 08 bike partway through the year. Again, this harmonious instrument that we're tuning, that wasn't very many changes, but luck or just pure, time and determination, just found the right combination. And that was that 08 YZ450 was very good because I was not a big fan. 03, 04, 05. I thought we took some big steps backwards, and then finally we gained some knowledge and just pure time and effort out at the track.
It reminds me though, Keith McCarty would not flirt with the gray area because I remember we stayed back after Redbud because I was getting frustrated, just not getting the feeling I wanted. And he said, well, we're going to have the first 08 bike that we've got our hands on, so we're going to have it there for you and give it a shot. So they rented the track, left it rough, rode both bikes, back, and every time was quicker on the 08, which was the chassis was the 08, but it was mostly like 07 components, so it was the same, but just and every time I was quicker on that bike, and I'm like, I got to race it. I'm like, can I race it this weekend? Keith's like, no, we don't even have bikes in the country, and I'm like, fucking, I know other people that have said they had bikes in the country that didn't. I'm like, let's make it work. And he was like, no, we don't work like that at Yamaha. I said, I've ridden for a few teams. When there's gray area, they go through it. Nope, not here. And I'm like, come on. There's nothing worse than riding a bike and going, I love it. And then they go, well, we're going to have to wait about 3 rounds before you're allowed to ride it. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
You're killing me here.
But yeah, I mean, they were very very by the book and by the rule. And I was like, just tell them you got 400. They can't count.
Yeah, no one's going to check.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think you went on to win several races right there at the end and lock down. So that was one
was a
year
saving
that stands. It really was, because
I think I had bitched enough, and then Keith believes enough in me to go, all right, let me just see if this kid actually knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
What can you tell me? There's a real weird dynamic on the current Yamaha 450, where in stock trim, you go to shootouts or you give it to magazines, and they go, this bike's awesome. It's great. Winning shootouts on all the places. I mean, for the last several years, it's winning both bikes. Mm-hmm. The transition to the professional race team, for whatever reason, is not seem to be jiving with that. And even when you watch, I thought, oh, maybe it's just the riders. But when I watch the bike, it looks like they struggle in big whoops. They struggle in certain track conditions.
I'm less in tune with what's going on these days, and I don't want to pick on anyone just for the sake of picking on them, but a lot of times, and I'll just tell you from my experience, from the top down, like just all the management and how things get, laid out and tested, and just everything goes in some fashion, and sometimes things can go backwards, and it's just, I mean, we've all experienced it, regardless of the color of the company or whatever, and even riders. You get certain riders that don't agree with a bike, that it doesn't. So I don't know how much of that applies to this situation, but you do see it. I think the 250 team, I know that Star program is very solid. Maybe it's Bobby is the driving factor. I don't know, but I think they've put a lot of the pieces together.
I think there's a lot of reasons when you go and look at it.
Yeah, and I think those are the things, regardless of the color. I think that management from the top down and how they, just the whole daily attitude and just how people approach, and because, we're all riders. We're all fickle little, one blue sock, one red sock away from not winning a race. So it's almost that through the whole system. If this guy believes that he's on the best stuff, and there's got to be some proof to the pudding. You can't just, pixie dust and convince a guy, hypnotize him or whatever. He's got to believe in that program.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I think, and again, not really picking on an individual here, but I think that the Yamaha 450 program lacks that magic through whatever little successes or, just the things going right enough to start to believe. I mean, I was very disappointed that the racing stopped, because I think Plessinger, just through some development and
he was getting
starting there. Exactly, because we all know how fickle riders can be, and I think it's you've got to believe, really. Yeah. And if you don't believe, that much doubt is the difference of a podium or 10th.
Yeah. Especially nowadays.
This year.
Yeah.
I mean, this year is critical. So I don't think the bike's missing anything, really. I mean, look at Barsha's had some really, really good success, and not even in the mud. He went out and got second and and won. So he's showing that despite of maybe some of the little nicks in the whole program, I think there is something there. So I think it's just one of those things they've got to continue. You got to ride on your successes, and everyone's got to be convinced that success is there to have. It's a very, very kind of
it's fragile.
But in their 250 department, they couldn't win anything for a while, and then if you go look at the last 5-6 years, they've been the bike to beat in the 250.
Yeah, they're like the new Mitch and his Pro Circuit program.
I think in the 450, like you said, I mean, it's just. I don't think there also hasn't been enough guys that have been there long enough. If you look, they were with the L&M team for a while and outsourced this and JGR. You know what I mean? I think when you go look, like you said, when you piece it back, there hasn't been
the solid foundation of growth and solid program.
It's pulled out of factory racing, supplied them, worked with them, had engineers working with their engineers who worked with their, but when you say how well it does, I think it's a great consumer bike, because when you go to a track and you go, right, it's got incredible power, the bike will last forever, low maintenance, it doesn't do anything bad. It does everything pretty good in my opinion. But at a Supercross level, with that motor and everything, I think on paper when you say, hey, let's have all the weight in the middle and down low, it's good. But when you're, like you said, through whoops and you got, that the gyro and the movement back and forth, I think it just makes the motion a little more exaggerated. And I think some of the riders, it's just hard to find where's that medium balance. A lot of riders, that I've talked to the factory guys, I think they just find that they get a little more weight being transferred from the front to the rear. And at certain tracks, it hurts them. And in other places, the bike's incredible. But I think it's a great consumer bike. Even the 2020, a lot of people that rode the previous bike said 2020 was noticeably better.
Yeah, that was
even Plesser just said, when someone's off the record not being paid to say it, he's like, it's definitely a better foundation for me.
Yeah.
And you could see him making those little chips. And I think his riding was better than his results were showing. And then it got cut off.
Yeah. Well, and again, it comes a little bit, for some years there, I called it kind of the James Stewart situation, because because everyone was so quick to jump on. Nobody wanted to admit that James, or recognize that he had crashed on every bike he ever rode. And he didn't crash as much at certain times, but I think that really put a big black eye on the YZ450.
Yeah.
And this, new style engine and all that. And so I think that carried for a long time. I had a funny situation where I went and supported Yamaha I can't even remember the magazine, and I had one rider that was afraid to ride the bike. He goes, I was kind of concerned, and this was the first year James was back on the Suzuki. And so I tried to explain to him, I said, it's been kind of a tough thing to dig your way out of, because that everyone talks and everyone loves to jump on that bandwagon, right or wrong. They want to sound like they know because that other guy said it too. And
have you actually ridden it? Oh no, but he told me
pretty much exactly that. And and thank God, unfortunately James was falling off that Suzuki. Looked outstanding and then fell off that, and it took some years, but that rider, at the end of the day, he said, I forget whatever bike was truly the best that year. This was probably 5 years ago or something. He picked that one first, but he picked the Yamaha second over several other bikes. And he's like, that thing's actually pretty good. But it lends to, people want to believe what they want to believe, and they don't even... and it goes back to the Scheidler days. It was the best thing we did is full blind, get on it. I don't care what color, what you know about it. Forget all that and, fill out my paper.
Yeah.
I don't think enough of that goes on anymore. I think everyone kind of, they don't know, so they just want to repeat what somebody else says. And then that gets a lot of things into a lot of trouble. But back to kind of that whole transition from production to racing, I think there is many little incremental things that need to happen for success. Because, it's like Yamaha Star Racing. It's not like Mitch decided, I'm just going to do a lousy job with my bike. But what happened is they just got a little more strength, and now all of a sudden the momentum goes this way. Same thing. Just like you guys have both pointed out, that Yamaha 450 team has been such a hodgepodge kind of...
It just hasn't had that consistency going down the same road. It's like they went there, dead end. All right, let's go down. Oh, no, they didn't. All right, let's try there.
So I think I've seen, and especially the 2020 being a better baseline, it's helped everyone go in the right direction, but it's unfortunate that the racing stopped, because I was seeing Plessinger have some very, very good, even if it's only a heat race or something, you can see the confidence. Yeah, exactly. The confidence start coming back, and we all know as riders, that's everything.
That's everything, yeah.
So
obviously there's always little chassis improvements to make here and there, but have we kind of hit a limit on four-stroke engine technology?
No.
That's bearable in this sport. I mean, there's pneumatic valves. There's. Are we going to ever see that kind of stuff, or have we kind of?
I think cost will limit it. You know, because that's the unfortunate side that just from all that I know and all that I see, it makes a difference. I mean, a few yen here or there, nope, not this year or this, the budget and everything. It's all got to fit in this nice little package. So I think, we've seen big jumps, I mean, there was disc brakes a while ago and, fuel injection and four-stroke.
Upside down forks.
Upside down forks. There's a lot of things that have come along, but I don't see there being a technological limit, but I think financially the bikes are starting to get
it's a good way to put it.
Not really starting, but they've been expensive now for a handful of years, and I think that's going to slow things down a little bit because, just like you say, pneumatic valves and surface treating bearings and things like Grant was talking. I mean, all that's there. But who really wants to pay that ticket when, you're just throwing it in your truck and going out and enjoying with your buddies? I think they're definitely good enough for that.
I think the technology has allowed, almost getting back to the beginning of our conversation, which was potentially updated two-strokes, where you can use less CC, less moving parts, which means less maintenance, less cost.
Cost down.
I think the technology is going to allow things that, like two-strokes, that maybe like, oh, that's old technology. Wait a minute. With this new technology combined with that, I think you could see bikes with smaller CC. Just look what happened with cars. Big V6, then big V8s, then now everything's gone back smaller, but they're able to get more out of a smaller block. I think you might see that happening in our sport. Smaller CC, maybe less moving parts, but still producing the same sort of experience or ride.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to just go to the manufacturers and say, I have this idea for an engine. It's half the size. It's lighter.
Less moving parts. Yeah, exactly.
We'll just tell them, don't be a dick to the consumer.
So tell us how Dr. D began as a business. What brought that on?
So that was kind of a whole little fairly short turn of events, and I apologize if I throw anyone under the bus, but obviously I'm a test rider, been a test rider, and so I was on the very beginning of the whole four-stroke revolution. I understood, I went through all the different renovations and things that went along with developing that bike, so I learned and knew and feeling and all that. Well, so right around that time, longtime friend of Mitch, and he told me those things will never be race bikes. They're trail bikes. They'll never be race bikes. Okay, well, my experience kind of would say different, but I'll let you think that for now. He was totally against four-stroke. Yeah. And then, Tom White at White Brothers, I don't care what it is. If it's chrome, it's carbon, I'm going to sell it. So that was his approach to everything. So, he hired me to race the first year of the 98 400, four-stroke nationals, some of those Thunder bikes. I was just
Sound of Thunder,
all that stuff.
Spud too, right? Spud raced those with you.
Yep. Yeah. So Spud and I were the teammates on that little White Brothers
Smale
team.
Also there for a while.
Well, he was the counterpart. He was the Husaberg guy. Yeah. He was trying to beat us, and he was fighting on that. I think the engine in that bike probably weighed more than my whole bike did. That engine, I remember Tom Moen trying to take one out. I think he needed like 4 people to help him up in Washougal one time.
Engine lift.
Oh God, those things were. But
workman's comp.
Yeah, technology and the evolution of the whole thing. But so at that time, I really started running into a lot of walls. I'm trying to help Mitch, and he's just like, yeah, whatever, because I was helping him with all two-stroke stuff and everything, and he's just whatever. And the White Brothers, they were just a selling company. They didn't really know how to. Yeah, they just wanted to build it and chrome it and put it in a box. And so, and we were trying to do some Supercrosses then as well. And I would test all week, and then I would get to a race, and they'd have them little discs, that Super Trap system. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those things were horrible for any kind of response and all that. And it looked good on the dyno, though. But that pipe would be on my bike. I'm like, why did we spend all week testing, which is a regular, little exit tip, and this is what we sell. So there was just a lot of frustration going on. And so I came home one night, and I'm talking to my wife, and I'm going, man, this is killing me. I know how to help all these people, but they're hiring me to help them, but then they don't listen to what I'm saying. And so she turns to me, she goes, well, why don't you just do it yourself? Why don't you just start your own company? And I'm like, okay, anyway, what's for dinner? I just completely blew it off. And then that's the next week, I think I came home and I was like, man, this and that, 'cause I was really struggling trying to race some Supercrosses and dealing with these guys at White Brothers. So she said it again. She goes, you know all this stuff. You've done it. This is kind of what you're good at, is developing and tweaking and making things good. And I'm like, So then I went to Mitch and I said, hey, Mitch, I'm, kind of want to start this thing and I want to do this. And he's like, yeah. It was funny. This is what he said. He goes, well, yeah, I'll help you because you'll fail anyway. He tells me this whole Larry Rossler story of something. He's like, yeah, so I'll help you because you'll be out of business in a year anyway. And it was very matter of fact. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I went to Tom White and I'm like, hey, Tom, I'd like to do this. Will you support me? Would you build it for me? Or we don't really build any. I'm obviously paraphrasing and boiling it down, but basically, we don't really build anything. We don't know what we're doing, so you should probably go somewhere else. And I'm like, he goes, but I'll sell it if you make it. So anyway, through the next couple of days, Mitch finally agreed. He goes, okay, I'll build it. You just help me. And I think his whole motivation was he knew I would help develop his stuff along the way. So that was kind of, and so we're off and running, went down and got a business license and started the company. And so, it's, Tom was great to me. Tom bought everything I could make. That guy, he knew how to sell stuff. And those were great early on. Mitch was making it and Tom was selling it and everything was great until, of course, Mitch.
At a point he went, hey,
well,
Doug,
and it's so funny because
hold on a second.
Everybody warned me. I'm like, nah, Mitch, he's my buddy. We've been friends for 20 years, I used to, but it's not real clear kind of what happened, but he just said, you're done. I can't do this for you anymore. But, as the story was from some other people months later was, he figured out you were selling more than he was. And, he's pro circuit and you're some old rider guy. But, people believed in me. Yamaha kind of, rolled me out as this guru testing. So all the pieces were in the right places. And so, those successes were good. But so that was kind of the beginning of it, and we've definitely had highs and lows, and as the industry shifts and all that. But it's quite a ride.
It's a tough industry to make a living in. It's so susceptible to every downturn and every fluctuation of the market.
He's in one of the toughest industries in the toughest state to do business.
Well, exactly.
He's all emissions. Everything he's dealing with is
Grant
emissions.
and I, we could go way off on this whole California Resource Board, and I think we both had the bad end of the stick with those. But it's true. We are so regulated here. It really makes it really difficult.
We're leading the way for the rest of the country.
The world. Come on, listen to those guys. They'll tell you. The whole world follows what we do.
I don't want to be a leader. I'm happy to be mid-pack. I'm quite happy to be mid-pack right now.
I just like to make a little money. Is that too much to ask?
So is business good, though, still? You guys are cranking?
I make a lot of other stuff for other people as well.
Oh, okay. Private label kind of stuff?
I've got all the equipment and machines and everything. And, I made kind of a decision 5 or 6 years ago that I wasn't going to chase all the race teams and spend all that money because to me, if I got 20 employees doing, $5 million a year in sales, it's not much different to me doing, having a quarter of those employees doing a quarter of those sales.
Right.
I'm making more money with less.
It's like, and less hassle.
Exactly. And it's in one hand you go, I really want to chase all that again. And then on the other hand, you go, you know what? I've got a lot of things figured out.
Yeah.
I make good money. I've got a lot of equipment and machines and things that people don't have. And, I do find doing a lot of private label. And
I think Bill Cervera kind of learned that lesson too. He's been around forever and did the factory Honda, factory Suzuki program for a while and was very successful with it. But I think it's like he realized, look, I can just not have all that headache, sell to my customers I have. He doesn't do a lot of marketing. He doesn't advertise any magazines. He just sort of cruises by with what he's doing.
It's a tough thing. You're either one of those guys or you're one of the other guys. And it's really hard to do that without some other help. And for me, it's just been myself for many, many, many years, and and my employees or whatever. But I'm not that big. let's just dump everything here and go do this and go do that. I'm a little, I guess, a little too conservative. I like to know what's going to happen.
But probably a little less corporate, more hands-on. I mean, my story is, and when I, after my eye cancer and came back to racing, ended up teaming up with Jason Lawrence and those guys, and we actually got to do some testing with Doug. And it was cool because like I felt like we could speak the same lingo, and we'd go and try stuff. And you're like, yeah, that's what I thought it was going to do, and But it was cool to work with Doug for that little period that we had, just to go out and try stuff and see improvements, and you also realize that there's a lot of performance or just adjusting of the power that can be done with an exhaust, even on a 4-stroke. You go, oh, they got plenty of power, but then you go and you ride something, you're like, wow, well, that made that bike so much easier to ride, or that gave me that grunt where you wanted it, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I got that nickname Human Dyno, is because I did do very well in all the pipe shootouts, because that's where I developed it, on a standard bike at the local racetrack, and I owned a dyno, but, I was very good, and, I had a good friend, Mike Hooker, which you probably remember that
Hook was
name.
my team manager for
a couple years. A sharp guy there. He helped me with all my numbers, and he would help make sense. I'd go, here, try that, and do. So, well, I would end up winning nearly every pipe shootout, but I still sold 1/10 of what everyone else did, because I didn't have all the other things that went along with it. But so, it's a fickle game, and especially like Grant says, the amount of regulation and things that we're all up against.
Crazy.
I'm just not willing to play a lot of those games that you're required to play.
Well, it's hard to go and go, okay, I'm going to invest time and money in this avenue, and potentially there could be a law change or a state mandated whatever, and all of a sudden you go, oh shit, I wasted my time because this is irrelevant. Or I can't sell it.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that a lot of us within this industry grumble about is when CARB came in and kind of took away a lot of those options. Back in the day, you name the shop and they would sell so many accessories, build it into the finance, all that sort of stuff. And I mean, we couldn't make stuff fast enough to fill the need. And then as soon as that was a big change in my opinion, and I've kind of a lot of others share that, man, that just gutted the industry, really not being able to put all those things on and build them into the financing of the unit. So
it's good enough for America, but not good enough for California.
49 state, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You and Kurt Nickel, who was our last guest, or two shows ago, you guys are kind of like my inspiration, because you guys, I still see you guys out just motoing. I feel like Kurt's maybe faster than he's been in 20 years right now.
I know,
he might actually win a world title if he went back out there.
Yeah, he should go back to chasing, right?
Don't let the dream go.
How is your body doing? Like, I always wonder, how long can I do this before I'm like, okay, it hurts too bad. Well, yeah, I mean, there's days when I go to swing my leg over and this hip, I'm like, oh, that hurts, and I'm thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah, it's, I hadn't really thought a whole lot about that. And, I had that big wreck in Mammoth where I, it was a pretty big one. And, I did try to make you think about it, but, from there I was so determined to not let it hold me down that I almost went the other way and, like raced more and chased other things and things after that. But, nowadays, my kid's riding a lot more, and so my focus has shifted a little bit with him. But so I don't do as many races as I used to do, but I'm still riding all the time. And I feel like if I had a knee thing that I did at REM kind of beginning of last summer, and it kept me off the bike for a while, and being off the bike, it felt like everything hurt worse. It's like you get a little bit sedated. I couldn't bicycle or anything with that knee, and that really was.
You stop moving, it'll gather up quick.
That's saying body in motion stays in motion, right?
Exactly. So in these last several months, I've really enjoyed being able to ride again and mountain bike and do all the things that I've done for the last 40 years. But so for me, and it's funny because I had a conversation with Kurt, this was months ago, but he said, I'm afraid to stop because then, it'll just be doomsday. Because all
just
of a sudden
go buy a coffin.
Exactly. Everything's going to start hurting in that. But I don't really ever, I can remember, I think it was Davey Coombs, did some farewell thing for me, and I didn't even realize that's what the story was going to be titled. They just did some story on me in their magazine, and then when it came, I'm like, farewell, what?
Where am I going?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not done yet. But so yeah, I've never really had a plan to race to a certain age or this is it and I'm stopping, and none of that. I'm so involved in the sport from every different angle that I just keep doing it because I enjoy it. You know, so that's kind of just what keeps you going.
Well, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot because I do. Like, I had this big injury, or I'm getting older to a point where like I'm scared to go on tracks. Like, should I just? But I miss riding, And I tell people, man, get into trail riding. Go do. You can still ride. You don't have to go to a motocross track.
Yeah, and ride the main track or whatever. But yeah, for me.
But it's tough to quit. It's.
I mix a lot. Even my kid, he's a 16-year-old, pretty fast kid. But
I was gonna say, is he faster than you now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a 125.
I haven't been in the track that much of late, but I remember. I don't know when it was. I think last year we're at Glen Helen, but he was on a 125.
Yeah, but
I think he still was all. You and him were like similar.
Yeah,
you were on a 450 maybe.
Yeah, back then we were pretty similar. Well, that time's changed. It's been.
Sometimes it also happens quickly too.
It does. It kind of just slowly creeped up, but yeah, he's. But my point with that is, I think he's got a pretty good perspective of everything. Like we go trail riding. It doesn't have to be a track and all that, and that's more maybe. For me to, kind of when I was milking that knee injury and stuff, but he's as happy as can be. And to your point, there's so much riding to do out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be pure hardcore moto. And I've always been a trail guy. I mean, way back, and that's one of the things, trying to kind of get other guys to get their program figured out. The Emmings, the Bradshaws, the Mickey Dunn. I said, dude, we're not even going to the track today. We're going to go to the desert. We're going to go climb hills. We're going to go,
Be one with your bike.
just do fun stuff. And some of that I might be missing in today's sport, but I guess ride, enjoy what you're doing, because you never know when it's going to get taken away.
Yeah.
You don't know if all of a sudden something, just like you were saying in business, that all of a sudden, hey, now we've decided in the great 50th state, even though I think it was brought into the Union 46th or something, but that it's all of a sudden they're going to come down with something new that we're not going to be allowed to do. Something.
It won't be long. I think it won't be long.
Yeah.
It was funny when I bumped into you out at Kauai, maybe it was been a month ago or so. You were out there with Bradshaw, who was on his way back from the desert, and I was shooting videos of some bike or something. And so I'm down at the bottom, like where you come back up that big hill. There were some guys parked right there, and they're saying hi to me while I'm waiting. And Damon comes by, and I go, "That's Damon Bradshaw." They're like, "What? Really?" And they're all excited. And then you come by them all. "That's Dr. D. That's Dubach right there." "It is." and then Carter came by. Well, that's Dr. D's son. Look how fast he is.
He's faster than both of those guys.
But it was so fun to They got so excited, and I still watching you guys ride. Like when Damon comes by, he looks the same, just aggressive, and
he has that certain.
Oh, he's got this style, man.
That arch in the top of the back.
I got all excited, and then they were all excited. And I just, as I rode off, I'm laughing. I'm like, look at us, man. Little kids.
I know. It is funny just because that's what I think motorcycles can bring.
Yeah.
It's truly that raw, and it's so emotional for so many of us that it is great. We went to, and we watched the Supercross in Arizona. We went to that ACP, Arizona Cycle Park, and Damon and I and all that. And we had so much fun that day. Damon, he's, like I said, he's borderline bipolar. He's can be anybody, but I think he's grown and matured and mellowed. But we just had so much fun riding. I think Carter was faster than both of us on his 125, but it didn't matter. We would just get out there and do little sessions, and it's so... Yeah, it's that raw emotion of getting that adrenaline and just trying to do something that can be so fulfilling.
Well, and even at our age... And in our positions, it's like, how it's supposed to feel. And so maybe you only get it on half of the turns. But when you get a turn right, you're like, oh, yeah, that was it.
It's like hitting that one good shot at the golf course. It brings you back every time.
Yeah, exactly.
What'd you shoot? Don't worry about my score. But you should have seen the approach on the 18th.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just ignore
That's
all
just
the
a
other
number.
stuff.
No one cares about numbers.
So what about Carter? Is he going to... Is it something he wants to pursue? Or is it just kind of for fun right now?
We keep it as it's just for fun. And and I think he wavers from time to time. He got his arm broke last year at that track in Arizona. Actually, we were at their big race in December, and that kind of little nick in his arm, because he loves doing everything. I mean, the kid goes to Sheep Hills and jumps every big jump, and he's doing all kinds of tricks at the scooter on the skate parks on his. I mean, he is a very skilled kid, broad skills. And I've never put the pressure on. We do Loretta's here or there, but he told me, he goes, Dad, that track kind of sucks. That whole event's
I don't think he's the only one that feels that way.
So I think I finally got him off the Loretta wagon, and so
that saved you about $15,000
annually. But so I think he understands that he's not this tenacious, gritty, whatever it takes. I don't care if I break my whatever. But he's so very good. I mean, if you watch him ride, he's just a very, very skilled kid.
Yeah.
So I think he is in a little weird situation.
How old is he right now?
16. So I keep telling him he wants to be an airline pilot. So he's going to start going to flight school and things here. 17 is when you can start apply and get a private pilots and all that sort of stuff. So I think he's going to pursue that somewhat. And I told him, if it was me, I would say this just straight. I'd say if it was me, I'd shoot for about 8. Somewhere when you're 18, we'll go do a national. We'll go to Hangtown or something. And he loves two strokes. I got him.
Well, have you guys been doing the All-Star races? Did you do some last year?
We did. We did, or he did. I did the one at Southwick a couple years ago with him.
Okay.
But then he did a few last year, and it was funny because it was like he enjoyed one, and then the other one he's like, that wasn't all that great. So it was weird. He went to Unadilla, and I think, what did he get, 4th or 5th at Unadilla, full gate, and he's just out there having fun, never been on the track before, and, he just had a good old time. And then he went to Butts Creek, rode around in about 15th or something, just, not even enjoying it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that kind of stuff sort of, shows me that he's not that die-hard, whatever it's going to be. I'm going to be a moto guy, but he enjoys it. So I'd love to see him, ride a national, and just because I think he really wants to inside. But
sort of in a like I did it type thing.
Yeah, just kind of check that off. Yeah, that was something that, because you get wrapped up in the sport. All his buddies are doing this and doing that, and so. It's easy to think you should, but, I just totally leave it up to him. Yeah, whatever he wants to do. And, we'll always have bikes, and we'll always go to the desert and go trail riding at the very least. So,
make it a family.
Yeah.
Did he do Hangtown a couple years ago?
Yes.
I thought I got a good start at that one. That was one of the ones I did, and I hate that track. But I was like, after that race, I said, I don't think I'm doing any more of these. He passed me. I'm like, oh, there's Doug's kid. And then Rick Ryan's kid passed me. I'm like, oh, there's Rick Ryan's kid. Surratt's kid passed me. I'm like, all right. Like all these guys, that are kind of more my era.
It's now next gen.
Am I in the wrong race? I think is this supposed to be a vet class?
I thought this was supposed to be the vet class.
Vet class, yeah.
You have to do a vet all-stars. Maybe I'll sign up.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I almost had that impression that that's what they were positioning it as. Originally, they were trying to get some of the older guys.
That's what they were trying to do.
But then that failed quickly, so now it's just, all right, get all of your young guys.
But I think it's neat to have both. If
I
Nick
agree.
Way, like he's done some, and RV, and
Mike Brown.
Yeah. When you have some older guys like that, and then some of those younger kids too,
well,
it's really
cool
fun.
for the guys that have the credentials for some kid that no one knows to come and beat them, because everyone goes, hey, who was that kid, or what's that kid's name? So it kind of puts that next generation kid on sort of a platform.
Well, it gives them a place to race in front of the people. I think that's one of the...
get recognized.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we've fallen behind a little bit in Europe, that they've got proper race series for all these people. Love it or hate it, and, the organization or whatever, but at least they've put it there for the kids to go and do. And you see that. You look at those, like at Matterley, that 125 EMX class. It was some fast, serious fast
Volan
kids.
went over, and he didn't do that great.
No. And he's arguably the fastest guy here. And obviously conditions, and there's some other things. But, when you watch those guys ride, they're a little more relaxed in those tougher conditions.
Yeah.
We get these mirror smooth tracks for 6 laps, and... Loretta's is bumpy, but it's still a little flat field.
It's different.
It's too tight, and Yeah,
it's not a real proper track.
But going to Madley on a 125 or going to Loretta's, I think you're comparing two different things.
Yeah, it's not even apples and oranges.
I mean, a lot of those kids when they go to Loretta's, it's like I'm the big fish in the small pond. You know, you go to Madley, you're just like I'm just another entry. One of the classes.
Yeah, I was something till I rolled into this place.
Exactly.
Any suggestions to improve the health of our sport? If you could wave a magic wand and change.
If I could wave a magic wand, I would say somehow make a discounted bike, without all the bells and whistles. I think, because you see it in a lot of the other segments, maybe watercraft or UTV or, they do make this thing that's a little bit better target price point.
Without having to buy a Chinese piece of shit
Exactly.
bike,
there is the ability to find this point. Yeah, not this thing that, that company's out of business. You can't get any parts.
Exactly.
So,
Can we not make the two strokes that?
I think so.
I think we can.
Get rid of, like the Renthal bars or whatever. Just put go back to the old steel. Whatever you can make cheap. You know what I mean? Like put some.
Yeah, if you had
something that doesn't need a lot of maintenance either.
Yeah,
like you don't have to change the filter every time. Like maybe every 10 rides. Or you don't have to lube the chain every time you ride. That's a lot of what's happened with bikes. They've gotten to a point where if you're a guy who's just getting into the sport, you have to write down a freaking checklist. For a while you had to bleed your forks and do all these other things.
Yeah, well, that stuff's ridiculous. I just think you could make a YZ125, put
electric start. It needs an electric start, though.
But you're going to jack the price. If the whole concept is to get it entry level.
Well, I guess if it's a 125, you can kick it pretty easy.
It's easy to kick.
Two strokes kick easy.
Yeah, and even YZ250, because that's what I've been riding mostly lately, kind of prepping for that the two-stroke race. Remember when there used to be a four-stroke only race? As you fall asleep over there, Donnie. And that thing kicks real easy.
Yeah.
That thing.
Is that not a viable option to do?
It's tough to get the big companies behind that stuff because most of them, Honda swore they would never have another two-stroke in their lineup, and Cowie, and so there's really only for the bigger ones, the KTM Husky and then Yamaha that still produce a two-stroke. But yeah, I would like to see it just even in the four-stroke, and I think it's just within the system it's too difficult to do. But yeah, if you did, like you say, steel bars or not all the bells and whistles.
Tires
but even suspension. There's a lot of money in suspension that comes on these bikes, and a lot of times guys change them anyway. But even like something that's maybe not adjustable, it's just literally a spring in a mechanism, like minimal.
But yeah, if you went back to some of the older units and applied a little bit of our knowledge for the original setup, I think you could produce some of that. Because, if you took $500 out at the manufacturing level, that's a few grand at the retail level.
Yeah,
so if you could get that thing, if you could get a nice modern 250F, 450F, even still with electric start at, $69.99 instead of $89.99, I think you would open the door for more people.
It's a big price reduction when you take in percentage.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would have changed about your career if you could go back and do it over?
Yeah, just injuries. If I could have somehow, because always, immediately after you're laying there going, man, I wish I wouldn't have tried that jump or tried that pass on that guy.
It's like the video game. You wish you could have that 30-second rewind real quick.
Could I just jump back and make a better decision? But really, just the injuries I wish I could have, skipped a few of those. Because those at key moments in my career, I feel like a lot of it was hampered by just time off the bike and missing races and all that goes on. And not that I had some any big major injuries, but just enough that, man, I'm off the bike again, or well, this one's nagging, a knee or a wrist or whatever. But really, I don't think I would change much of anything, because when I look at my kind of path through life, racing, I wouldn't say saved me, but racing definitely turned me into a person that I am now, which is, I think, very different than what I would have been if I never found racing. I mean, travel, and like Grant says, just understanding cultures and meeting people and just seeing how the rest of the world works. I wouldn't have had any of those opportunities had I not, if I would have just Had some, and nothing against anyone that hasn't had those experiences, but I'm just.
It was a unique opportunity.
It makes you understand. You're more tolerant. You're a whole different animal.
Things make more sense, I think.
Yeah, exactly, because you have a perspective that a lot of people don't have the chance to have.
Yeah.
You know what I've found too is I appreciate this country and my home and like the things over here, the culture here, more than I ever would have had I not traveled. And like he said, I think it's an education you'll never get in a college.
No.
People most people will never travel the places we've been. I mean, think of all the stinking countries we've been to, and it's crazy. It's a crazy
countries or stinking countries, because I've been in stinking countries and countries.
We've all been to both, right?
Hey, don't get ping started on that again.
I've been in some shithole countries.
The little rooms and the diesel and all that stuff. Don't go back into that again.
Yeah, there's been some places that I've been to that I'm like, I'm glad that I live in America.
I better hope that check cashes, because this one I had to work for.
Yeah.
Are you still planning to continue doing like World Vets and maybe going up to Mammoth and?
Yeah, all those things are I'm very fond of those. Mammoth's a little bit tough because it's changed so much. All the qualifying. It's turned into a big money making machine. I wish we could turn back the clocks to the old days where it was truly just a fun event. But I'll still go. I haven't gone the last couple of years because I was traveling the Nationals with that Watanabe guy.
And there's always a conflict with the National at the same time.
It used to be a weekend off, but that was in the old days.
It's my birthday weekend, and the first time I ever did Mammoth was 03, and then I think from either 04, 05 onwards, it's always conflicted.
Yeah. So our birthdays must be similar. I'm June 30th.
17th,
yeah. So it's always, because I remember one year, and I was in the big hunt for the King of Mammoth and all that. So the final day of my birthday on the Sunday, they bring me a birthday cake on the gate for the main event. I'm like,
what do you want me to do?
What am I supposed to do with this?
You're like, if you're going to bring me something, bring me the crown for when I'm king of the mountain.
Yeah, something. But so that event's all, it's been something dear to my heart. I've been going up there for over 30 years, but I'll go this year because my one Japanese guy, he's staying in Japan and riding 450 this year.
Okay.
And so I will go up there, my kid will race and all that, but I'm just going to go and enjoy the week, the fishing, the mountain biking, all the things, without the strain of trying to race and all that. So.
I wish I could just ride like practice and then not even race, just
and just socialize.
Enjoy Mammoth after that. You know what I mean?
And that's kind of what I'm going to do this year, because my last year was, I don't know, I guess it would have been 17 now because I didn't go 18, 19. So, I enjoyed it. I raced and all that, but I think it's going to be a whole different experience going up there and only worrying about my kid for those couple days, but spending the 10 days really enjoying the mountain,
Yeah, exactly.
Not worrying about having a couple of beers at Roberto's.
Or getting up at 4 in the morning to get in line.
That's the annoying part.
Yeah. But and the World Vet is kind of the same thing. The last couple of years that I've missed it, I've been in Japan. So it's just that whole tie with them, and I don't know what's coming this year. Their whole series is getting pushed back a little because of all the health things that are going on in the world. So I don't know. I might be in Japan on that weekend like I have been the last 2 weekends. And Kurt cuts me a little stipend, a little money to not show up because he's trying to catch up to me in title wins. But I think he's got a few behind. But
you two have some battles, man. I was telling him
we've had some great stuff.
So impressed watching you two at Farley Castle a couple years ago on those old ass bikes.
Yeah, we had some good races that year.
God, man, you guys were moving. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, that was it. The funny part about that, and I might have rubbed it in his face a couple times, because I beat him on his old bike.
Oh yeah,
I heard you over the loudspeaker running.
So I might have said it to more than just him, but no, I mean it's so funny because Kurt is, at first he used to scare me, he would come and do the vet race every once in a while, but I think he was still doing all the Nitro Circus stuff, and he just wasn't that committed, and so he wasn't much of a competitor, but but he would just like kind of stare at me on the podium, and I'd be like, "Oh, this guy gonna kill me?"
Yeah.
But over the years, going and doing Farley and just seeing him, he's a great guy, and we
he's
have a lot
cold
of fun
on the surface, but once you get to know,
we have a good time now, and I think it's he's become what I would consider a friend. That we have that mutual respect because we've been on each end of the scale, and we know the lives we've each led, and so it's all good. We have a great time racing, and so hopefully if my schedule permits, I'll be out at Glen Helen in November and add a few more to my column and rob him of a few in his column.
Nice. And the two-stroke World Championships, if that's going on, you're going to be there?
Yeah, that's what I've been.
I got a 125. I'm ready to do it.
They just pushed it back a month. I don't know if you saw that
I haven't
email.
seen that.
Yeah, it's now about a month later.
April then sometime or May?
No, May. It's like May 9th or something like that now. So, I'm ready. I had everything kind of geared for this date. I've been doing a bunch of motos, but now the two-stroke I bought's going to be wore out in another month. I'm going to have to buy a piston.
Hey, just put the little pins in the main bearing and hunker it down there.
There you go. Hopefully the thing won't be that wore out by come May. But now my kid will go out there and race, and he's asking me, he's like, because I think a year or so back they let one of the amateur kids jump in the 125 pro race. Because he's like, I want to race with the faster guys, but it's like all this whole AMA and amateur and all this BS, and I'm like, well, just do I think it was Hawkins jumped in there. Like he rode the regular intermediate, but then they let him jump on the line and go with the pro race, and so it'll be fun.
I don't think anybody cares. Let him rip.
Until he wins.
Well, no
one cares until you win.
But he's done with Loretta's, according to him, so I don't have to worry about that whole debacle showing up there and getting turned away. But I think it'll be good. I plan on being there, so. If they ever hold it.
We got one last question. How do you want to be remembered in this sport?
I think just a guy that has a lot of passion for motorcycling and just everything about it. It's really. It's funny because I've had guys come to me that I don't even remember. They're like, oh, yeah, like 5 years ago, I had this problem, and you came over and you helped me, and you dug through your parts, and you helped me fix my... Just that kind of stuff is natural for me. I've always been helpful to anyone and everyone, and, just to be known as a guy that just, he loved and breathed this sport. And, not the fastest guy, and... Not that he'd want to, this race or that race, but a guy that just, it's kind of what makes me tick, because all the titles in the world, nobody's going to remember how many vet titles I had or that I won a Supercross or not. I mean, that's all kind of secondary. I just think that, meeting somebody at the track, park next to them, you do that all day, so many times. That impression, whatever that guy takes away, and not by me, I better put on my best, because this guy might tell the next guy. It's just,
it's just you.
And it's just me, and it's him. That guy got up that morning, loaded his bike, paid money at the gate, got gas, whatever, to come and do something that, we all love. And, yourself, I still see you at the track all the time, Grant, and it's that kind of family without, using a cliche, but it's that family of we all have lived and walked in those same boots in the trenches. And so it kind of gives you that mutual place to stand that everyone just, it's not easy.
Yeah,
but
well, I when we said we were having you on, it was a whole list of people saying just how friendly and humble and what a great guy you are, and so I think that.
See, I put on a good fake facade for all these people.
Yeah,
See,
all those
working.
people. It's working.
You crushed it.
Keep doing it.
You could have gone into acting as well.
Yeah, there you go. Because
Hey, bud, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I look forward to it. I mean, ever since Grant kind of hit me up at one of the races, Mount Morris or something last summer, I'm like, oh, that'd be a lot of fun, just because. It's easy. It's not a chore at all. It's just coming and sharing stories.
Talking about what you love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
So thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. That's Doug Dubach. Stay tuned. We'll be back to wrap up the show.
Take me down, so nice.
4WP is more than a store. We're truck and Jeep experts. From wheel and tire upgrades to full custom builds, 4WP has you covered. Do your rig right. Shop online or find your store at 4WP.com.
Yeah. I want nights where it feels so nice. Something in a photo. Right now. Let's do this right. Go slow out of moonlight. It's still shining. One day I'ma let go. One day I'ma let go. Everyone's using me, but maybe that's something I like. Yeah, I've been on something since last month, but I'm feeling alright. Maybe I'm blind to see. Maybe I'm losing my mind. So I've been on something since last month, but I don't feel alright. It's me against myself. It's me against myself. I'm starting to black out, yeah. I've been staring at the stars. Running from myself. I'm running from myself. I'm starting to black out, yeah. I've been staring at the stars. Oh yeah. I wanna keep running. I don't wanna keep running.
Hey, welcome back. That was Dr. D. Awesome dude. If anybody that knows him will tell you one of the nicest guys on the planet. And definitely a legend in our sport, man. Like I think we were talking about, I'm not sure there's anyone that's ever ridden more laps than he has. And you can tell his passion for it is still there, which is so cool.
Crazy for me because I'm telling you, is like when he was talking, all those places, that's where I grew up and hung out riding, and to all those tracks, it was just like,
yeah,
it's like time machine.
Well, he also lived and raced through, I think,
fun times.
Two of the coolest eras.
Yeah.
You know, to me, the 80s and into the mid 90s. To me, that was just
well in the 80s, and I hate to be so biased, but the 80s in Southern California was just a hotbed here.
Yeah.
It was insane. Like you would just everything was happening right here.
Yeah,
it was pretty crazy.
There was basically the Golden State was a national series
for sure.
It all happened right here.
For sure, you go there, you'd see whoever your favorite star was, and they'd be riding there.
Yeah. Well, if Wardy's getting helicoptered in to wrap up the championship, you know it's important. Hey, I want to make a quick shout out to OGO. Normally our What's in the Bag segment would feature our guest pulling something out of one of our OGO bags. However, there's nothing in the bag because no stores are open to buy stuff. So we'll get to that. But go check out OGO and their full line of backpacks, roller bags, gear bags, hydration packs.
I always bring that one up.
You really
put
like
it on. Well, I use with just riding on the trails. I wear it every time, and I put a spare tube. I don't know if you know this, but a little tip is, and I learned this from the off-road guys. You got a 21 and a 19-inch wheel, but carry a 21-inch tube because you can put a 21-inch front in a rear, but not the other way around. But you don't need both. So I'm like, good to know. And we did it once. And yeah, put all my stuff in with my drink. And
is the tube like wrinkled up inside the tire?
It must be.
Yeah, dude.
It has to be.
Everybody's been doing that for a long time.
Okay.
Sorry,
guy. Well, you know what? I also have no bubbles in my graphics either. So
You're pretty awesome.
Hey, our 4-Wheel Parts Get At Me Q&A. This 4-Wheel Parts is your one-stop shop for everything off-road. So go check those guys out for service, parts, anything you need. 4-Wheel Parts has you covered, and they've got everything. Donnie, what do we got for questions today?
Yeah, question is, the tough blocks seem to be more trouble than they're worth. Is there a better way to mark the track? It seems to take out a lot of guys.
So they're better than hay bales. You know, used to be hay bales back in my day, and I broke a femur landing on a hay bale. Those things don't move at all. It's like hitting a block of concrete. So I've seen tough blocks. Yes, they do tumble into the track occasionally, and maybe there's a better system for anchoring them down. But, man, I've seen a lot of guys who might have been hurt who landed on a tough block and bounced right up. You know, it's like an air mattress. So I think they could improve the way they're tethered to the ground.
Well,
but
here's my thought on that is, yes, we've made progression. And the thing is, you know, if you look at the outdoors, you know, like a Cherbis make those plastic stakes, and they could make them in different colors and whatever, and they could mark the track like that. But it comes back to, well, there's no advertising on those, you know, for the people that spend a lot of money to be in the series. So the tough blocks are more to aesthetically make the track look like it flows, and that's the, you know, Troy Lee Designs corner, and that's the Power Dot corner, whatever it may be. But to me, I think there should be a way, it can't be that complicated, where it's basically, say, a banner that's 2 feet tall, that has printed both, or even just on the outside, so it's around the outside of the track, and that if you go over it, it just bends and pops back up, but it's just anchored at the ends into the ground, but it's basically on a, just a spring load or anything that you could go off the track, hit it, and ride straight back across it, and it just goes doing.
I like that for outdoors. But I will say, I think it's Supercross when you've got lanes going, right next to each other. If you just had stakes or something that wouldn't stop you.
But here's my thing.
Maybe guys
the
are
tough blocks don't really stop you. When guys hit them, a lot of times they lose control of the bike. I've seen probably more often than not. If you did lose control and you're going to have a head-on, if there's nothing in your way, usually that guy anticipates where you're going to be and you can avoid it. But when you've hit a tough block or something and you're going into the other lane with your feet off or your hand off, I think that so we could go back and forth on that, but I do think there is a better way, and I don't like things that someone else could clip and it rolls out in front of you and takes you out. It's happened to me, and I'm like, motherfucker.
Hey, but there's been occasions where guys have gone over the bars and landed on the tough block and been 100% okay.
That's what I just said.
Like
it's
a landing
like an
pad.
airmat.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of airbags, at like Bercy, they use airbags. I remember the one I think it was like 03 or 02 on the 125. The whoops are pretty big. And I thought, I'm going to skim him all the way on the left, and if things get a little sideways, I'm dismounting. Choose God. I come through, bailed, jumped, grabbed an airbag, bounced, and landed on the other side of the track and was dodging traffic. But it did help. But I think there's a better way so you don't have loose objects, which is what they are, that can cause other problems.
What if they had a nylon loop in each corner and used plastic stakes to pound them into the ground so they kind of anchored a little bit?
But then the thing is, if you make a mistake, the turn and get pushed over the berm and you hit those, it happened to me before when they staked them in, it causes you to crash because they don't move and you don't hop over the berm.
Maybe you guys should stay on the track.
It's not us who are having the problem staying on the track.
All right.
Look at all those pros out there this year. They're battling to stay on the track.
I'm just saying maybe they should stay on the track.
All right.
Next question. We're moving on.
All right, so maybe. Okay, so somebody on the internet wants to know what you guys keep in the garage. What do you guys currently ride or like to ride?
I have a slew of bikes at the moment.
That's what I say.
Doing bike builds for Vital. I've got a YZ125 that's about to drop. That's insane. I've got a KX450. I have a YZ250F. I have a Husqvarna 252 stroke. Let's see. And I have a CRF 150 for my wife and a KLX 110 for my kids. And my Husqvarna Svartpilen.
How is that thing to ride? Is it fun?
It's so fun.
You wheelie it or?
Yeah. It was a little slow stock, but I got all the cat delete system on there. And
No, not in California, you didn't.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, I
did.
And if anyone from Carb is watching, no, it's good now. It comes with like a cone pipe, different ignition, different airbox, and it gets it.
Nice.
I have a 390 Duke. And it rips pretty good too. Same thing. I made some slight modifications, but it rips. I have a YZ250 that I got from the auction that was a pile of shit and brought that back to life, which has been fun. But just had a big end bearing go out on it, so I had to tear that apart. Luckily, there was no other damage. I have a 450 Yamaha. I have a ZX10, which is my track bike. And then I have a bunch of like vintage bikes that me and my dad either work on, play with, or plan to restore, or restoring, or have restored. I've got like actually the kids ride around every now and then. I got the old, remember the Z50, the monkey bikes? You've seen, I've got a couple restored.
I was thinking about getting one of those from you.
They're so fun. You should. I have 5. I don't need that many. But
5?
Yeah, so I have just like a little variety of all kinds of bikes.
I go over to his house one time and there's like 4 in a shed and I'm like, what are these? Oh, yeah, I'm working on them.
One day.
One day.
Well, the days I think come and gone. So now, yeah, like most people, I've gotten carried away. I have an 86 CR 250. I mean, I have a Can-Am, 1981 Can-Am. I have a 79 Cowie. A lot of these are just fun things that I don't ride, but the bikes that I ride are pretty much either 2-stroke, 4-stroke, or a couple street bikes.
You got that, what year is your supermoto bike? I saw it over there in the shop.
Oh, it's 04?
04?
Yeah, from XGames.
That thing looks amazing.
Yeah, the big Brembo calipers on the front. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Yeah, so I got some toys. I have more toys than I do riding time. So
I know that's a problem I have.
And then the other problem is, since our deal with Specialized, having the e-bikes in the garage, it's kind of convenient because my mountain bikes got a promotion to the kids, so they always want to go ride and hit the trails and that. And I'm like, yeah, I got the e-bike. Yeah, let's go. Oh, battery's dead. Sorry, I'm out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to have all the toys.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
All right.
Is that what we got?
Yeah, that's all we got.
That's our 4-wheel parts. Get at me Q&A. Send us questions on Instagram or Twitter. We'll answer them right here on the show. And that is our show. Speaking of the show, thank you to Yamaha. Thank you to PowerDot. 20% off over there using our code. Method Race Wheels, 20% off. Troy Lee Designs, SKDA. Get over and check out our Whiskey Throttle Show graphics over there. 20% off as well. Dunlop Tires, 4-wheel parts. Adidas Pro Circuit. Nihilo Concepts. Get your free gift over there buying anything. I recommend Lever Grip, the frame tape, the throttle housings that are all billet, the pegs if you're looking for some real sweet bling. Seat Concepts, go check those guys out too. Amazing seats, best in the business period. Fire Department Coffee, 20% off using Whiskey Throttle as your code. Specialized, OGO, and thanks to Paleo Ranch Foods. Get over there and check those guys out. They're available at Walmart now. You can pick them up there or Amazon. And Langston Motorsports. That's our show, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back when we can get back. You guys have a good one, and we'll catch you on the next show.